It is 10 a.m. Good morning from the 104.5 The Zone studios. I'm Lucas Panzica. In NFL news, Seahawks wide receiver DK Metcalf has requested a trade. Seattle reportedly seeking a first and a third in exchange for the 27-year-old. The LA Chargers released outside linebacker Joey Bosa on Wednesday, saving them over $25 million in cap space. Bosa will be 30 next season, and he has not had a double-digit sack season since 2021. The Las Vegas Raiders are signing four-time Pro Bowl edge rusher Max Crosby to a 3-year, $106.5 million contract extension, making him the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. On average annual value, the deal includes over $91 million guaranteed. College hoops, number 4 Tennessee fell at Ole Miss on Wednesday, 78-76, dropping the Vols to 24-6, 11-6 in SEC play with one game remaining in the regular season. And the SEC women's basketball tournament continues. The Lady Vols taking on Vanderbilt in the second round. Tip-off happening right now in Greenville, South Carolina. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Well, a disappointing result for the Vols last night. You had the opportunity to tie the game as time expired. Igor Milicic with the layup that just wouldn't fall. And Ole Miss gets the victory at home over Tennessee. A competitive game, an interesting game. I thought a lot of overreactions about it that came out of, this is just another, typical Rick Barnes loss. I saw you sent a couple of particularly opinionated people's tweets to the chat last night, Lucas. I think there are going to be overreactions had about that game. These things happen, especially on the road in the best conference in men's college basketball. Not to excuse it, because you had the opportunity to tie it and potentially send it to overtime, so you'd like them to finish the job. But disappointing result, without question, in Oxford last night.
Yeah, the Negavols were out last night. A lot of negativity out there. This is just classic Barnes. This is how the season's going to end. Like, come on, man. It's the SEC. After every regular season loss, you're seeing this stuff. But you have to credit Ole Miss here. They were fantastic in the second half, 42 points in the second half. And Tennessee was up 9 early in the second, looking like they were in control with a chance to pull away. Ole Miss ripped off a 7-0 run to bring it within 2. And from there, just blow for blow down the stretch. It was a tight game. And Jamin Brakefield, off the bench, 19 points, every single one coming in the second half. Just went crazy. So Tennessee defensively was not good in the second half. Gave up a lot of and one opportunities. Offensive rebounding was not great. 15-8. Vols were out-rebounded on the offensive glass. Was a big reason why they lost in the second half. But I'm not going to lie, when Igor Milicic Jr. drilled that 3 with a 4-point play to tie it up, I thought Tennessee was going to stick it out and win. And it's Igor who gets a chance at the game-time bucket at the buzzer and just kind of loses control of it on the way up. So hard-fought game, life in the SEC, and Tennessee's shot at a 1 seed now in peril.
It was in question prior to the game, and now in peril is the appropriate way to put it. It was a fun night of college basketball, not just Tennessee and Ole Miss. Obviously, Vols fans wanted the result to be different, but the Florida-Alabama game, and I know that Florida started to peel away in the second half of that game, but 99-94, Florida goes on the road and beats Alabama. That was as exciting a college basketball game as I think I've watched this season, particularly in the first half. It's a tired line. We say it every time we talk about college basketball in the SEC, but this conference really is just electric night in and night out. I am so hyped to do the show from the SEC tournament here in the next week, and we've got the women's SEC tournament on right now, where we've got the 2 local teams, Tennessee and Vanderbilt, the 9 and 8 seed in the second round of the SEC tournament after Tennessee waltzes over the top of Texas A&M.
Lady Vols in the Summit Blue today against Vanderbilt.
That's just such a good look.
It should be a good game. So tough loss, really tough loss for Tennessee fans to swallow last night. That Florida-Bama game was electric until Florida kind of pushed Bama away at arm's length. Bama was able to stretch it out at the end. By the way, I feel like ESPN has got to adjust their scheduling with these games. Basketball games, college hoops games are no longer 2 hours. They never are, especially these big-time top 10 matchups. They are minimum 2 hours, 15, 20 minutes. Like, let's give it's very often.
It makes me so mad when they're saying, all right, well, we've got the other game underway. We'll go to it here in just a second. I'm like, you knew this was going to happen.
I don't know how many games, whether Tennessee games, Vanderbilt games, that I've wanted to watch this year that I've had to wait until after the first media timeout before I actually get to watch it. Unless you can always flip over to the ESPN app, I guess. But yeah, they've got to figure out that scheduling. But
your fan base is threatening you, by the way.
Oh, is that so?
Cody Walker on the F&M Bank chat, where you can interact with the show on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. You can also call us, 615-737-1045. Throughout the course of the show today, Cody Walker says Vols is pretty close to a cancelable offense.
That is a common phrase, especially in the social media hellscape that can be
come down
Twitter.
On your neck.
There's a lot of negativity. Every time, Rick Barnes can be sometimes a very interestingly polarizing figure amongst the Tennessee fan base. I've never quite understood it. To me, he is the best coach in Tennessee men's basketball history, to be clear.
Yes.
And I don't think it's really close at this point.
That is more a cancelable offense if you say that.
For sure. I don't think it's particularly close, though. I know Tennessee fans have always had an infatuation with Bruce Pearl, and they always will. But Barnes has officially been here longer than Bruce, won more games than Bruce, has done things that Bruce never did at Tennessee, like win the SEC tournament, and has gone as far in the NCAA tournament as Bruce ever did, making it to the Elite Eight. So Tennessee will be in the mix. What's interesting to me is Reese Davis and Jimmy Dykes were talking about it on the broadcast last night. The value of the SEC tournament. It's going to be a war. It's going to be obviously incredible. We're excited for it. But they mentioned Rick Barnes telling them pregame about the time he was the head coach at Providence and they won the Big East. Crazy tournament. They won it, came back to a big celebration. They were exhausted, got bounced in the first round. And the time he made it to the Final Four with Texas, that Texas team got bounced in the first round of the Big 12 tournament to a Bobby Knight-led Texas Tech team. And I think back to when Tennessee won
Bobby Knight at Texas Tech.
And I think back to when Tennessee won the SEC tournament, and the ensuing NCAA tournament didn't go great for the Vols. They were bounced in the second round to Michigan. So it is, it's not something that teams are going to try to lose by any means. But, Tennessee got bounced by Mississippi State, one and done in the SEC tournament last year, and made their deepest run that they've made with Barnes.
I was watching that at the, what do they call the bar that used to be the tequila, the Patron Club or something like that?
In Bridgestone.
Whatever the restaurant, I believe it's the BetMGM Lounge
it is.
Now. So I was watching that with a bunch of Tennessee fans who were very disappointed by the result against Mississippi State, which if I remember correctly, we talked about that. Probably going to be a dogfight heading in.
It wasn't much of a dogfight.
Yeah,
Mississippi State routed Tennessee in that game.
That was tough.
It's just, the point is, the SEC tournament is going to take a lot out of the winner of it. It's going to take a lot out of them.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different version of kind of like, what we talked about with the college football playoff and Lane Kiffin and other coaches. It wasn't just Lane, but Lane was probably one of the bigger faces on it, saying, do I really want to compete or play in a conference championship game as we try and figure out the college football playoff? This is, of course, before Ole Miss was eliminated, but kind of posing the question of, are the conference championships in college football still worth it based on the structure of the 12-team playoff? The conference tournament now in college basketball, you have to really consider whether or not the juice is worth the squeeze to win the conference tournament. And the level of, it's just going to be taxing, to your point, on the winner of it, because you'll just be playing a lot more basketball. And is it worth the potential that you could have tired legs heading into the NCAA tournament, and it could potentially, will it be a talking point if you fall short in the NCAA tournament, which a lot of randomness can also attribute or can be attributed to the NCAA tournament. It's not just, teams looking tired, but could you make it a talking point about the team that wins the toughest conference's tournament if they were to have a disappointing result come the actual bracket?
Hat tip to Ole Miss. Chris Beard's done a great job there. Do you want him at IU?
I'm not getting him.
But do you want him?
Yes.
Like, is he your number one? Would you rather have Chris Beard or the Iowa State head coach?
I would rather have Chris Beard, but I know I'm not getting him. So
first time in Ole Miss history that they've won 2 games in the same season against an AP top 5 opponent. Yeah. They beat Bama earlier in the year. And I was looking at it this morning. One player that played in the game against Tennessee last night was recruited to Ole Miss. Everybody else transfers. Now, Tennessee's got a ton of those guys, too, to be honest. I mean, Ziegler and Meshack were the only starters for Tennessee last night that were recruited by Barnes, and they've got a couple more on the bench. But
I'm going to have to settle for TJ Otzelberger.
He's a good coach.
He's a fine coach.
Iowa State's a good basketball team.
I would like Chris Beard.
Joe Lenardi released his latest bracketology 11 minutes ago, and he's got Tennessee as the first 2 seed, back down to 5 overall. And it is Florida that moves back up to 4 overall after beating Bama last night. 12
lead changes. They were tied 13 times, I think ESPN.com had them at. Tennessee, 25 field goals off 23 assists. Zakai Ziegler in particular with 15. It was points in the paint, though, that ultimately widened the margin between Tennessee and Ole Miss last night. 46-20 is what Ole Miss was able to outscore Tennessee. Quickly, though, just on coaching changes and me trying to pilfer the SEC for my next basketball coach, my number one, if you're asking me, is Bruce Pearl.
Of course.
I don't know if a scenario exists because Bruce Pearl is supported. Now, I wonder how you view this as somebody who's got an SEC, you're an SEC alum who understands that football is the thing that drives all of these forces. You've got multiple athletic programs within the Tennessee athletic department succeeding at a high level, but there's no question at the end of the day that football is the most important to the fan base. Mm-hmm. I think that is also the case at Auburn, where the basketball team might succeed, where they do have a great environment, they do get great support, but at the end of the day, it's a football school when things are functioning the way that they expect them to function. Indiana is a long way removed from a blue blood program. Again, your last championship coming in 1987, I think it removes the blue blood status from them. But it is still a program that at its height is going to prioritize basketball more than anything else that's going on. I don't know if that means anything to Bruce Pearl or means enough to Bruce Pearl at this stage of his career to potentially try and bring something like that back from the dead, because whoever does it is going to be a college basketball hero. Indiana's got the money. I think Bruce has such a good thing going at Auburn. Dawn is going to send me a nasty text here in just a second saying stay the hell away from my basketball coach. But
he's only ever been, too, in terms of his power conference jobs at football schools.
Right.
But I feel like Bruce is the type of personality that has relished that. He loves being the basketball coach at a football school and making the basketball program a huge deal. He did it at Tennessee, and he's obviously done it at Auburn. Auburn can shell out to keep Bruce. He's happy there. His son's on the coaching staff, all of these things. I think Bruce is a loyal guy. Like, I think he was genuinely heartbroken by how things ended at Tennessee. He continued to live in Knoxville. His kids went to Tennessee. I think he was shattered by how that kind of played out.
Sure.
So
well, it's also nonsense when you look at it in retrospect.
In hindsight, it was absolute nonsense. Yeah. But I would be shocked. Yeah, I'd be shocked if Bruce decided to leave for just a more traditional basketball program.
Because it does bring up an interesting question. Is it more appealing to Bruce Pearl to do what you just described, which is make the basketball program at a football school relevant, or to bring what is no longer, but was a premier college program in its sport at its height, with now the resources that they're willing to dump into it hand over fist legally, because these things can be done now? It's a question that only Bruce Pearl could answer.
We had a caller call in and wondered if you would be okay with Bruce Pearl being the next head coach if his son would be named the coach in waiting. Would that remove him or remove your interest from Bruce Pearl?
Is that a thing that Bruce wants?
I'm not sure. That's
no idea.
I'm okay. Honestly, I'm okay with it. I'm so miserable. I've relegated myself to thinking that my favorite team is just going to suck for the rest of my life. Like, that's the headspace that I live in and year out, and I'm tired of it. I just want something to get me excited about my sports life again, like my actual sports fandom. Not sports as a job, but the thing that I care most about. I know Tennessee fans can relate to this too. Tennessee has pulled themselves out of this, But for the longest, I think Indiana basketball and Tennessee football they run such parallels to how they mattered for a certain period of time, to what their priorities were as an athletic department, and how they've floundered about for so long. And Tennessee here in the last 4 years under Josh Heupel has been able to stop the bleeding. Whereas Indiana just, I don't know where or how it ends, but I'm sick of it.
Okay, I looked up Steve Pearl on Auburn's athletic page. His number is on the webpage. If you'd like me to call him, we could try to get him on the show really quick, and you could ask him if he could speak to Bruce for you.
You know what? I know 3HL had Tom Crean on. I would like to actually talk to Tom. Well, I don't know if Tom Crean would want to talk to me. I wasn't very kind to him while he was there. Coach, I was a student, so it doesn't matter. But I would love to know Tom Crean's opinion on all of that at some point in time.
Tennessee fans have a complicated relationship with Stephen Pearl as well, even though he played for the Vols when Bruce was the coach. Vanderbilt's jumped out to a 23-15 lead over the Lady Vols here late in the first quarter.
Vanderbilt, nothing to turn your nose up at. Michaela Blake's just an absolute all-star at this point in time. We'll keep an eye on the SEC tournament on the women's side of things for you. Henry Anderson, former NFL defensive lineman, is going to join us coming up next. He played for a variety of different teams across his career, and free agency is on our doorstep. So we'll talk to Henry about just all the ins and outs of what it is to be a free agent and how it differed from all the different teams that he ended up playing for across his career. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hatty Bees Hot Chicken. 615-737-1045 is how you join the show. We're very happy to be joined by former NFL defensive lineman Henry Anderson now, who's got a really cool business venture going on here in Middle Tennessee that we'll let Henry tell you about here in just a few minutes. But free agency is going on at this point in time. It can be a complicated process, and while it's fun for us to play armchair GM, a lot of people's lives are tied up in a lot of these deals that get done, and Henry, having played for a variety of different teams during his career, I think can speak to that uniquely. Henry joins us now. Thanks for doing it, buddy. We appreciate it. How complicated is the free agency process from a player? Because I know it's probably unique every time you go through it, and you had the opportunity to go through it a couple of different times.
Yeah, it is. It's a unique process, being the player that's actually like going through it and not just the fan viewing it from the outside. I know with my situation, it was a lot of just me kind of sitting back, waiting for updates from my agent. It's not like we're on the phone talking to these teams. It's more so agent kind of working the phones and keeping you up to date, checking in every day or two. For someone like myself, I wasn't, one of the tier one like free agents ever. I was kind of waiting for all those big contracts to get signed. And then once the GMs kind of target their big name free agents and get those guys signed, or if they miss on a few of them, then they kind of move on to players like myself. So for the first couple of days of free agency, it's always kind of, for me, it's just sitting around waiting for those big deals to get signed. And sometimes like you see guys that you feel like you're a better player than them and they're getting these big deals signed, and you're, you're getting a little anxious and nervous trying to figure out what your market's going to look like. But it's a fun process. It's crazy. Just, you could be in any different part of the country, just depending on what GM wants you and what team wants to bring you in.
No, and I think it's an interesting point to you, because I'm sure, players obviously have to have confidence in what it is that you do and who it is that you are, almost sometimes to the point of delusion, especially in games where you're trailing by a bunch and you need to kind of manifest how it is that you're going to, turn the tide in your favor, whether you're able to do so or not. But I think to the point of, you see some guys get some contracts that you think that you're as good, if not better, a player than, and you're looking at this from the standpoint of, well, okay, relative to the expectation that contract brings, Henry, I wonder if it's not sometimes beneficial to be one of those tier two guys. Because, for example, and obviously you don't have to comment on individual players, but Josh Sweat of the Philadelphia Eagles is getting ready to come out as a free agent this year. Obviously, they just won the Super Bowl. He was hugely impactful in beating the Chiefs. But he's a role player in Philadelphia, and he's probably going to get a contract that connotes, hey, bud, you're probably going to play about 80 to 85% of the snaps for us. Sometimes that doesn't translate, and then fans will turn around and be like, oh, this guy was such a waste of money. I wonder how players view that kind of thing, especially when you're playing on a defensive line that maybe has some of those high-priced free agents relative to expectation.
Yeah, it definitely takes the pressure off a little bit. And it's kind of similar. I mean, the draft process is kind of getting rolling now too. And like those first rounders come in with high expectations, coming in and being like an immediate impact player. Same thing with free agency. It's like if you're signing those big deals and I mean, even for someone like myself, my contract year luckily was like the best year of my career. So I was able to sign a decent sized deal for someone of my caliber. But even then, like I was a kind of a role player in my contract year. I was more, I mean, I was playing first, second, third down, but I was mostly, I made most of my plays on third down, rushing the passer, and came in, signed a deal, and kind of had the expectation to be like an every down, like playing the majority of the snaps on the D line. And that was kind of a new role for me. And it still came with a higher level of expectation. But I think you made a good point. It's definitely, a lot of these deals that guys sign, it's a 3-4 year deal, but really it's whatever the guaranteed money is. That's how long the contract is. Cause a lot of these teams will just cut you loose after your guaranteed money's up and don't owe you anything else. So, it can definitely be an adjustment though. It's a very good point. Like, coming in and being a role player, having a good year, putting up some good numbers, and then signing a big deal comes with a lot of expectations. And And sometimes guys move into roles that aren't necessarily what they're used to, and it can be an adjustment.
Former NFL defensive lineman Henry Anderson is here with us on 104.5 The Zone. He's bringing a couple of pliable franchises to Middle Tennessee, which he'll tell you more specifics about here in just a second.
So, Henry, how would you describe the difference in terms of the limbo that is free agency versus the draft process, when you don't know which team you're going to sign with versus which team is going to draft you? Just from a state of mind perspective, what's the biggest difference between those two, as you've got veterans in the NFL waiting for their new landing spot and obviously, incoming rookies that have no idea which team is going to call their name?
Yeah, that it's different for sure. Draft is such a cool experience because you're just sitting in front of the TV watching and waiting for a phone call, and it could be anybody. Free agency, you kind of have an idea of which teams are interested, which GMs are reaching out and talking to your agent, and you have a little bit more say, obviously. For myself, it was mostly the free agency was kind of driven by who was going to be offering me the most money. But yeah, draft, it's just like, you're sitting around, you got your cell phone obviously right next to you, and you're just waiting to see what area code pops up when you get the call. But yeah, free agency is still a lot of fun because sometimes, you can sign a bigger deal in a state like California, but after those taxes get taken out of the paycheck, you're making less than you would somewhere in like Tennessee or Florida. So it's definitely a fun process either way, though, because free agency was a lot of fun just because you have a little bit more say in where you end up.
You were with the Carolina Panthers in 2022. Obviously, Sam Darnold is one of the biggest name free agents, just from the standpoint of he plays the quarterback position in terms of where he's going to land in 2025. Do you remember anything about kind of what you remember from sharing that locker room with Darnold with the Panthers in 2022, how he sort of operated, and what do you make of his potential next landing spot, whether that be, what seems unlikely right now in remaining in Minnesota or elsewhere with an opportunity at a multi-year deal as a starter?
Yeah, and I was with him his rookie year at the Jets too, and his first couple of years there. And Sam's just such a good dude. It was, he had some good games in New York as well, but just didn't work out there. But he coming out of college, the guy obviously had everything you're looking for in a quarterback coming into the league, and it's been awesome seeing him have so much success this past year with the Vikings, and I'm sure he's going to find a good landing spot somewhere and continue to have success because he's a heck of a teammate, heck of a player. He was one of my good buddies when we were together, and it's been awesome to see him have some success for sure because he's got the arm talent, he's got the brain, he's got everything you want in a quarterback.
Henry Anderson here with us on 104.5 The Zone. It's interesting, Henry, because at the top of the draft this year, there's a lot of discussion, and not to get into the weeds on analysis of the players and things like that, but just from a construct of team building and how players view it versus how fans and an organization views it. You've got two quarterbacks who are considered potential and likely first-round draft picks in Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. You've got Abdul Carter, the pass rusher from Penn State, who is largely regarded as the best overall player in the draft. And a team, depending on which team you're talking about, because they're all in kind of different phases of their cycle of competitiveness. As a player, I wonder how you view something like this where Abdul Carter's the best player. Titans, for example, have a need at quarterback, but aren't necessarily in love with either one of these prospects. And you understand as a player, well, you're dealing with a less than competitive team right now, but having the best possible team versus drafting a quarterback just based off need and potentially going through something like Sam did at the start of his career, where you can run these guys down pretty quickly if you don't have the sufficient support system in place. I wonder how players in the locker room kind of view that cost-benefit analysis that fans and obviously organizations go through at the top end.
Yeah, to be honest, I would never put too much thought into kind of like what the GM is thinking. It was the draft when you're a player is more just you're hoping that they don't draft a guy in the first round that plays the same position as you. So it's like always you're kind of sitting watching the draft, hoping those first few rounds they're not taking somebody. Like for me, if the team took a D lineman in the first or second or third round, you're kind of like sweating a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's such a quarterback driven league. You got to have a quarterback to win games. And GMs are in tough spots where, if they feel like they need a quarterback to get over the hump, like, do you take the risk and pick a guy in the first round that could be a stud or it could be a flop? It's hard, and I don't have the answer, but the GMs get paid a lot of money to make that decision. But as a player, you obviously want to be on a winning team and you want to get all the pieces in place. But personally, like for me, it was like, build the strongest roster possible. If we can go out and get the best player available, I think that was always like the best decision for me, instead of trying to reach and, we need a quarterback, but we're not in love with this guy. Do we take the risk, or do we just go ahead and pick that, stud pass rusher like Abdul Carter? I think I typically lean towards just going for the best available instead of trying to just, pick whatever quarterback is available at the time.
Well, hell, I mean, you're saying you don't have the answer. Half the time, these GMs don't have the answer based on how imperfect.
I don't know what the stats are on like the first round quarterbacks that pan out and actually live up to expectations, but I feel like it's pretty low.
Buddy, it's a straight up coin flip. It's like 50-50 at this point. We have done a lot of these exercises, Henry. We have a lot of time to talk about bad football here lately.
I think if you bet against a quarterback having success after being drafted out of the first round, you'd probably be making money for the last 10 years.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said too, it's a lot. It's dependent on like the support system that they have, and if like they don't have the other pieces on offense, like there's only so much that the quarterback can do. So it's really building out the roster around them, making sure your O-line is solid. You got the pieces in place there. You got some skill guys that can make plays. I mean, all these teams, even if you don't have that elite Pro Bowl, All-Pro receiver or running back on the team, like there's so many of these guys that are still studs. And if you do bring a quarterback in that can make plays and put the ball in your playmakers' hands, like sometimes that does start to highlight some of your guys that might not have, some receivers or running backs or tight ends that haven't had a ton of success. But if you bring the quarterback in that gets them the ball and puts them in position to make plays, it can elevate a team to the next level for sure.
Former NFL defensive lineman Henry Anderson is here with us. He's opening up 3 Playa Bowl locations here in Middle Tennessee, and he has some more details on that for you in just a second. But I know you're a Stanford guy, if I'm not mistaken. Speaking of general managers, what do you make of former Colts quarterback Andrew Luck now being the GM at Stanford?
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I've always wondered kind of like why that hasn't been a position in college, because these head coaches just have so much on their plate with coaching the team, obviously, and making sure, they're coaching up these young guys and getting them fully bought into the culture and the way they want to do things at the team level. But then, I mean, off season, they're out doing recruiting full time, flying across the country. And there's just so much on these coaches' plates that it would make sense with having a GM position to kind of handle roster construction and everything like that. So I think it'll be a very interesting dynamic there. I'm excited to see how that plays out. Luck's an incredibly smart dude, and I think he's going to hopefully help bring Stanford back to some of the success that we were having when I was there and that we had years ago. So I'm excited about it for sure.
So you overlapped with Andrew Luck a little bit at Stanford before he was drafted, and then obviously you were drafted by the Colts, and you guys were teammates in both of your first NFL teams. What was that like as a guy that had played with Andrew, that came from the same college background, watching all of that play out? I know you were not with the Colts by the time he did retire in 2019, but what was that like from your vantage point, as everybody else obviously was blindsided by it?
With his retirement?
Right.
Yeah, it was wild. I mean, I was just as taken aback as everybody else. It was a pretty big surprise. But I think it was, the injuries and I think his body was just kind of starting to wear down a little bit, and he had so many other passions. And I mean, like I said, he's a really smart guy. He had a lot of things that I think he was interested off the field. And yeah, football, I mean, it's like I retired last year. It's just your body starts to wear down after a while, and you're like, I don't know if it's worth going out and just, for me, bashing my head in against 300 pounders every day. The risk reward just wasn't there anymore for me. So definitely still a surprise. I mean, he was really like in the prime of his career, and would still be playing for sure if he hadn't retired. But yeah, it was a shock for sure.
Well, and to your point about your retirement, now you're ready for the next phase of your career, and I'm sure that involves a variety of different things, but it also includes bringing some playa-bowl franchises to Middle Tennessee. Why Nashville in particular? The market. What can you tell people about when they can expect to try out? It's acai bowls, right? I love those things.
They're delicious. Yeah, they're yeah. So I've been looking at a lot of different restaurant concepts to get involved with after I was done playing. The franchise model is a lot of people draw parallels to football or sports in general, where the franchise model is you're given a playbook and it's a business model that works, and it's up to you to execute. Just like in football, you're given all of our defensive schemes, and we have a big playbook, and coaches give it to you, and you got to go out and execute it at a high level. So for franchising, I kind of it seemed to click with me. Playa Bowls is a brand that I've kind of fell in love with years ago, and saw that my wife and I had been wanting to move up to Nashville after I was done playing anyway. We'd been up visiting a ton. I grew up in Atlanta, and Nashville is 3.5 hours away, so we would come up and visit. I was with CAA Sports, who's based in Nashville, so we'd come up and meet with them all the time. And Playa Bowls has about 300 locations around the country now. In Nashville, there wasn't a single location in the entire market. So went to Playa and said, like, I want to basically build out the entire Nashville market. And so we'll be building out 14 stores over the next 5 years or so. And our first 3 are opening this year. And it's a great brand. The product is I think the best in the space. And the acai bowls, smoothies, juices, they have some cold brew and coffee as well. And it's a really good brand. The product's awesome. It's kind of a healthier option, which I liked, because, if I got involved with like a fried chicken or a burger place, I'd probably be 300 plus pounds still. So it's nice being around a product that's pretty much just like whole fruits, fresh pressed juices, smoothies that don't have a bunch of added sugars and syrups and stuff like that. So it's a fun brand. The vibe inside the shop is really fun. It's kind of like a beachy vibe, and I think it'll be a great brand to bring to Middle Tennessee, and I'm excited about the Nashville market for sure.
I have called acai bowls breakfast ice cream. That's what it feels like to me when I go get one, and they're
but healthy.
Yes, well, I mean, of course, very healthy, as Henry has just articulated. And you said that opening this year, it's pretty soon, right? That you guys are going to have your first couple locations open, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so we have the first 2 opening up in Murfreesboro. The first one is going to be actually opening on Saturday at 11, and that one's down on South Church Street in Murfreesboro. The second one will be in Murfreesboro as well. That one will be opening in sometime in May, hopefully early May. And then we signed a lease for a third location that's going to be downtown, a couple blocks off Broadway in the arcade development. So that should be sometime in June, we're hoping. And then, we're going to we're constantly looking for real estate, trying to find some spots, in Nashville and the suburbs. And like I said, we got 14 of these to build in the next 5 years. So we're excited about the growth potential. And I think Nashville is going to be a great market for us for sure.
Well, we appreciate you stopping by, Henry, and hopefully you didn't have an unpleasant experience here. I know Kim Smith probably said a lot of nasty things about me on the front end, so hopefully we didn't make it as bad as she might have made it seem.
Yeah, no, I appreciate y'all having me.
That's Henry Anderson, former NFL defensive lineman. His Playa Bowl franchises are coming to Middle Tennessee, Murfreesboro. You're first up down in the borough, just about 45 minutes down the road from us here. All right. We got a lot of guests on the show today. Henry, really good.
Loaded.
To provide some insights and information specific to the free agency process. We also have Titans team president Burke Nihill in studio. in the 11 o'clock hour, and Adam Sparks of the Knoxville News Sentinel, because we got a little Vols spring ball to talk about as Tennessee, the Lady Vols, make the deficit a little closer, 36-33. Vandy leading right now with 119 to go in the second quarter of the second round of the SEC tournament. Coming up next, you have headlines?
Yes, including one that just dropped regarding a particular free agent wide receiver.
All right, I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
It's time for NFL headlines with Lucas Panzica.
2 minutes ago, the Los Angeles Rams and wide receiver Tutu Atwell reached an agreement on a 1-year, $10 million fully guaranteed contract. Atwell was drafted by the Rams out of Louisville, second-round pick in 2021. Last year, he had a career-high 562 receiving yards on 42 catches, played in all 17 games. And I saw Teron Davenport bring this up after the Atwell news dropped. Wonder what this could mean for Nick Westbrook-Akine, who did not have as many yards as Tutu Atwell. Westbrook-Akine had 497, but Atwell caught no touchdowns last season. Obviously, NWI led the Titans with 9. So, interesting question on what the market might look like for NWI out there, as Atwell, again, is being retained, and a lot of Titans fans want the Titans to retain NWI, but is that what the price point could look like?
Yeah, it's crazy to imagine a world where NWI gets priced out of Nashville, right? But if you're a GM that wasn't involved in acquiring Nick Westbrook-Akine and a coaching staff who, really did him a disservice in the first part of the season by prioritizing Treylon Burks, and I get it. I do understand it conceptually, even though we all knew, everybody knew except for the Titans coaching staff, what a terrible idea that was, and ended up being a terrible idea. And all of a sudden, NWI's got 9 touchdown receptions on 25 catches last season, whatever. You don't bring him back for that price, right? That's a tough sell, even for Titans fans who, I am the staunchest NWI supporter that you will find, and not just because he went to my alma mater.
Cap's going up.
Yeah, I know, but that's 1 year, 10 mil. I think I said I'd be comfortable somewhere between 5 and 8.
If you're Nick Westbrook-Akine and his representation,
he's earned it, man.
Isn't that the baseline? You're looking at. He caught 9 touchdowns last season.
I know. I watched all of them.
Tutu Atwell's making $10 million.
There were only so many damn touchdowns that they had last year, especially receiving.
$10 million after catching 0 touchdowns in that Rams offense last year. That has far better quarterback play than what the Titans had.
I know. I think if you're Nick, you have to start at 10. But that to me means no dice. Now, at least with the Titans, draft, develop, and retain. I know that they did. He's not a drafted player. He's an undrafted player. God knows they developed him over the course of his career, and he did well to develop himself. I'm not giving that credit exclusively to the coaching staff, or coaching staffs, plural, given especially the most recent one wouldn't target him or wouldn't get him on the field for the first couple of weeks.
Tyler on the FNM Bank chat says, Buck went from NWI is the best receiver in the league to he only deserves $5 million. It was quite the turnaround.
That's fair.
To go from, I'd take him over Devontae Adams and George Pickens.
I'd do it again.
To $10 million?
I think I still kind of stand by that. But I'm just looking at it the way that I think a first-time general manager that has no association with him whatsoever will look at it. And I don't think that I think Mike Borgonza is going to be like, that guy, we'll find another one. We already have Colton Dowell. What's the difference? Which is kind of what the coaching staff did. I just saw them do it with Treylon Burks just because he's a first-round pick.
Colton Dowell's a 7th-round pick. There's not that big a difference between a 7th-rounder and a UDFA.
And the NWI was a person who could not catch the football when he got here, cut his teeth on special teams
5 years ago,
turned into a wide receiver. But if I'm them, I'm gonna say, well, why can't I do that with Colton Dowell?
SpotTrack has his market value at $3.9 million average annual salary. I would imagine it'll be higher than that. But Tutu Atwell getting $10 million.
SpotTrack, I think, always errs on the side of caution 100%. With lower.
And I don't think that's been updated after the cap, after what we learned about the cap going up as much as it is. Up against it, it's the only time for 1 or 2 more here. But DK Metcalf.
We could save some headlines for later.
We will. There's a ton to get to.
Okay.
DK Metcalf, as we know, has requested a trade from the Seahawks. He's 27 years old, 15 games played last year, 992 yards, 5 touchdowns. And the Seahawks reportedly are seeking a 1st and a 3rd round pick. as
That's
compensation for Metcalf.
Well, what does that sound like? That's the AJ deal. DK Metcalf is not AJ Brown.
I agree. I think AJ is a better player.
AJ is absolutely a better player, and AJ got better after the trade. Like AJ has done nothing but up his production, and I know Philadelphia is in a better situation to allow him that, but AJ absolutely paid that contract off and then got an extension as a result. DK Metcalf is not that. Now, he's still, I mean, he's better than a lot of players that have come through here in the last couple of years, God knows. But I mean, I struggled with the first and the third for AJ. Didn't Hollywood Brown go from the Ravens for a first-round pick, too, to the Cardinals?
It was a draft night trade. Yeah,
it was the same draft night.
But for a first-round pick, I believe it was the 25th overall.
And AJ was 18 and, what was it, 100 or 80-something?
Some kind of swap. I don't know that off the top of my noggin. But what I do know off the top of my noggin, someone will probably pay that price because the Raiders paid that price and more for a Devontae Adams. They traded a first and a second for a 28-year-old, 29-year-old Devontae Adams.
Yeah, but DK's the third best out of those three. Like, Devontae Adams is better, A.J. Brown is better, DK Metcalf is the lesser of those three players.
Do you not think that, circumstantially, I could agree with you, but also this year's free agent crop and this year's draft is a poor receiver class, where people have talked about this year's draft as it being a full of number 2 receivers, but there's no number 1 receiver. So could you see and the Steelers are probably a bad example because they don't have quarterback completely figured out yet, but a team like the Bills, would the Bills be willing to give up a first and a third? Sure. Teams at the end of the first round would 100% be willing to give it up to get that guy's services. Now, would they want to pay him $30 million a year? I don't know about that.
There are plenty more headlines to get to, including one available free agent that the Titans reportedly could be in on.
Find out next.
It is 11:01. Good morning from the 104.5 The Zone studios. I'm Lucas Panzica. NFL news coming down today. Some transactions. Teams keeping players in-house. The LA Rams are signing wide receiver Tutu Atwell to a 1-year, $10 million fully guaranteed contract. Atwell caught over 500 receiving yards in 2024 and 0 touchdowns. Also, the Minnesota Vikings are signing former Tennessee defensive back and former Titans draft pick Theo Jackson on a 2-year, $12.6 million extension through 2027. College hoops, the SEC tournament going on in Greenville, South Carolina. Vanderbilt currently leading the Lady Vols 39-33 as the second half gets underway. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Free agency will be upon us before you know it. And there's enough players getting cut around the league where guys can start to sign right away. They don't have to wait if they're not on expiring deals. Come the new league year on March the 12th, hell, legal tampering starts 2 days before that. So by March the 10th, we should probably know where the vast majority of the top-end players, the most famous players available on the market, will be. We are going to get into some reporting by Cam Wolfe of the NFL Network. This is a finable offense, but our good friend Cam Wolfe of the NFL Network, thank you, has some insights and information coming out of Indianapolis about a player that sounds like the Titans are pretty interested in, as well as other teams. So there will be some bidding for a player at the top of the market, which we will discuss at some length. Titans president and CEO Burke Nihill will join us in studio here in about 20 minutes from now. Obviously, we are just about 1 year, a little more than 1 year removed from the groundbreaking of the new Nissan Stadium. Lucas and I got to take the tour, and I'd be curious to know, I know Burke is looking forward to sharing some insights with you all about your new stadium. And also, Burke has been a huge part of the reshaping of the Tennessee Titans organization, and in fact, is probably the closest person to speak on behalf of ownership for Amy Adams Strunk going with the organization. So it's going to be an interesting discussion here with him at 11:20. Your phone calls are welcome always. 615-737-1045 is the number. If you would like to participate, the F&M Bank chat also open for business. If you would like to live stream the show on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. You got a 2-point game between the Vanderbilt Lady Commodores. Is it the Lady Commodores?
I don't think they use the lady moniker.
Yeah, Lady Commodores probably doesn't work.
Yeah, it's just long.
Quite as well.
A lot of syllables.
Certainly the Lady Vols and Vanderbilt squaring off right now, 39-37, 8 minutes to play in the third quarter in the second round of the SEC tournament. Michaela Blake's not lighting it up yet, but certainly she can at an even point. For the Vanderbilt squad. A fun game.
Reminds me of when Dave Hart tried to do away with the lady part of Lady Vols.
What an idiot.
Tennessee athletic director. One of the worst moves by an AD at Tennessee.
The behavior of an idiot. Maybe not an idiot, but the behavior of an idiot.
Yeah, the backlash on that was significant. Didn't last very long.
This is why.
Yeah.
For what? So, we have some reporting from Cam Wolfe. This is courtesy of The Insiders, a show that debuts or that airs, I think, at 6 p.m. Central Time on the NFL Network? Either way, it's an evening show on the NFL Network. And Cameron Wolfe was asked specifically about Dolphins safety Javon Holland, who was not subject to the franchise tag and is expected to hit the open market.
Let's start with Javon Holland, who you just mentioned. Javon Holland is expected to reach free agency. The Dolphins do have interest, but from what I understand, he's going to have a very fruitful market. Talking to people in Indy, and even through the last few days, he's expected to eclipse $15 million a year, and maybe even close to $20 million a year, and that may be something that's a little rich for the Dolphins' blood. So, we'll keep an eye on how that evolves in the days ahead, but a couple of teams, the Titans, the Panthers, I heard, are in the mix potentially for him.
$20 million for safety is probably not what most Titans are thinking. Titans fans are thinking when it comes to this free agent process, right? If we talked about being selective in free agency and spending big money on, let's say, 1 to 2 players, right? Javon Holland is probably not a name that most Titans fans were thinking about.
Probably not. He's 25, was a second-round pick out of Oregon in 2021, has been with the Dolphins since then. But
he's an excellent player, though. Cosell and I just did the podcast this morning. Javon Holland is, as Greg describes him, a 5-tool player. You can basically do whatever you want with him in a defense. And Anthony Weaver, the Dolphins defensive coordinator, did exactly that. He's like modern-day Honey Badger to me.
Did Greg say where his best place to play would be? Because I have a theory on that, but
like which club?
No, just best position, best use of him. Like, should he be a for free safety, a box safety, be around the line of scrimmage? Like, what was Greg's opinion of him?
He didn't really specify where he thought his best position was. More to just say, yeah, he's one of those players that can help open up a lot of other things for your defense, because of how much he can do, which is kind of what Harold Landry here was for a couple of years, because you could have Harold rush the passer. You could drop him into coverage. It allows you to do more with simulated pressures and things like that. It helps open up your playbook when you have players that can do a variety of different things and allow you to implement more into your defensive scheme. But Greg in the podcast today did not specifically designate one spot for him as his best position. Do you have a theory?
Just as a rookie, he kind of played around the line of scrimmage. I remember when the Dolphins played the Ravens, that he was one of the guys that wreaked havoc on Lamar in that cover zero where they would blitz off the side. And it kind of looks like that statistically, too. His rookie year, he had 2 interceptions, 2.5 sacks, 3 tackles for a loss, never eclipsed any of those statistical heights again in his career. So I wonder if that would be his best position going forward. But he also had great statistics when targeted as a free safety, as a deep safety. Only 59% of the passes targeted towards him were completed last year in that deep safety role. So, like, to Greg's point, he can play both at a high level. He's definitely going to be a sought-after free agent.
Well, and it goes in line with what they already have, which Amani is versatile. So it gives you 2 safeties that can do a variety of different things, provided that they keep Amani at the current cap number. I personally would advocate to extend Amani Hooker to bring that cap number down, because I think he's a good enough player, and he's still under 30, which is crazy to think about. He's been here since 2019, and he's still under 30. But like I said, I think Titans fans probably hear $20 million for a safety with all the needs that we have. Are you crazy?
There is a tie there. Reggie McKenzie, who has been, before coming over to the Titans, been the senior personnel exec for the Dolphins since 2019, the former Raiders GM. But when we hear selective, I think a lot of people hear just not going to spend big money, period. Selective can also be based on specific players, right? It can be, we really like this player, and if it doesn't work out with this player, that doesn't mean go to plan B at safety and just go get the next best safety because we missed out on this safety that we like, right? Like, it can be just a pivot to another position. Selective can be about the player itself, not necessarily, we need safety help, let's go find someone to throw money at.
So, again, it's going to be fascinating to see how they go about this strategy and what selective in free agency ends up meaning based on where they allocate their biggest spends. Because I'm okay with 1 or 2 big spends here. With the amount of cap flexibility that you have, I don't think that you should just spend the cap space that you have for the sake of having cap space or because you have the money to burn. But if you go top of market or close to it with 1 or 2 players and then fill out the rest of it with, well, Bosa got cut yesterday by the Chargers. Khalil Mack, also an unrestricted free agent. If you help supplement your pass rush with a couple of 1 or 2 year deals, you also can fill in some critical needs on the offensive line with 1 year deals. Like I said, Washington is a good recent example of a team that did this successfully. Of course, Jaden Daniels made them the most successful, but it ended up being a lot of critical pieces and parts on short-term deals that can lend a great deal of experience to a young team. And this team has a lot of young players on it. And looking for some kind of veteran voice in the room. I know that they have vets, and again, Amani Hooker has been around since the dawn of time, it feels like, and still under the age of 30. Jeff Simmons is obviously there as well, so it's not like there's a complete and utter leadership void, but there's no question that there's a lot of young players on that roster that need direction, and that you could find guys on the open market to fill a variety of different needs that help your locker room, not just, all right, this player does this, let's pay him X, and that's as far as it goes.
Quandre Diggs return, probably not in the cards. Played good football for the Titans last year, but 32 coming off an injury.
Yeah, I haven't heard really one way or the other, but I haven't heard anything like there being a significant amount of interest in bringing him back. Now, maybe they go through the market. They decide, yeah, okay, Quandre Diggs, he knows what we do here. He's familiar with Denard Wilson's system. So maybe if they swing and miss or they get into a bidding war that they're not interested, because Cam Wolf also brought up Carolina for Javon Holland. So it's not like, the Titans are going to be the only one interested in a 5-tool player at safety, essentially.
And then another defensive free agent that is going to be out there is Chargers pass rusher Joey Bosa, who's been released, and that frees up over $25 million in cap space for LA. He'll be 30 next season. Has not had a double-digit sack season since 2021.
Also not healthy.
Has not been healthy. He was more healthy last year than he had been in the couple of years before that. Played 5 games in 2022, 9 in 2023, and he missed 3 in 2024, had 5 sacks. But yes, his production and his availability has dipped significantly in the last few years. So somebody's going to be out there in the market for Joey Bosa. I don't know if it should be the Titans.
Well, we got plenty of time to. Well, I guess we don't have plenty of time. This stuff is going to
not really.
pick up steam
Monday.
Well, and hell, for Bosa, it could begin. It's probably already begun. And I know a lot of people yesterday after his release, or yesterday evening after his release, were posing the idea of him going to San Francisco to unite with his brother, which would be an interesting pairing there. But we'll get back to the free agent discussion here in just a little bit. Let's talk about, it's complicated building a roster. It's complicated helping run a franchise. And that's what Titans team president and CEO Burke Nihill is a huge part of. He's also a huge part of getting the new Nissan Stadium up and running. And that is 1 year underway at this point in time. So Burke Nihill will join us in studio coming up next. The Tennessee Men's Clinic has helped so many guys over the course of the last decade. Plus, if you're dealing with erectile dysfunction, there are a lot of misconceptions out there about what it is to seek treatment. And the Tennessee Men's Clinic is here to debunk those for you, because lots of guys assume if the pills stop working, they have no other options then. For example, irreversible surgery to treat ED. And the sad reality is that if you go to just your family doctor, for example, to seek treatment, those may be the only protocols that they have on offer. Do not go through something like irreversible surgery to treat ED before you have talked to the experts at the Tennessee Men's Clinic. They specialize in men's sexual health issues. It's all they do, and it makes them the experts in the field. They have access to multiple protocols and options to treat ED based on your specific needs and what's going on in your body. So don't trust your health to an online pharmacy and don't feel like you're out of options. Go to the Tennessee Men's Clinic and see how they can help you, because they have treatments for everything from low T, ED treatments that increase size, stamina, and everything else in between. So schedule an appointment online today at TennesseeMen'sClinic.com for their Franklin or Midtown location, or call them 615-208-9090. Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by our sugar mama, Hatty Bees Hot Chicken, here on 104.5 The Zone. Titans team president and CEO Burke Nihill making his debut on the radio show. Not on the station, certainly.
No, not on the station.
I think on the radio
I don't remember
show.
being on the show. Thanks for leading me in with Dave Matthews Band.
Big Dave Matthews guy?
Big DMB guy.
I am a big DMB guy.
Bert, did you know this? Because Burke has famously bribed you with dirt.
Is that the last time you were on the radio station when you gave Bert his dirt?
No, I think I've been on since, but that was a special time.
It was a very special moment.
I remember asking him at training camp, hey, I was going to play Dave Matthews for you. You seem like a Dave Matthews guy. And you went, yes. So I remembered that.
A good read on people, Robert Walsh.
Allegedly. Also, he tried to open that he did open that canister of dirt on the A to Z live stream show that we did the other day, and some compounded gas, I guess, popped up in his face. So, have you cleared the shrapnel out of your eyes at this point in time?
He's still woozy.
That's what you get for trying to eat it, you idiot. So Burke is not here to talk about Robert's dietary problems, but to kind of update fans on where things stand with the new Nissan Stadium. You are just a little over 1 year removed from the groundbreaking, and I know appreciate you inviting media out to tour the site. I've never been on a construction site of any kind, clearly based on my apparel, but much less something to that scale. And I know you spoke to this a lot when we took the tour, but for the audience who hasn't gotten to hear, just the level of progress that you've made in really 8 months when you consider when the concrete started to go in.
Right. Groundbreakings, which we've just passed the 1 year anniversary of a groundbreaking, that's usually pushing fake dirt, right? It's not actually digging the first hole. And so we really got rocking, sometime after that formal groundbreaking. And I mean, it's been impressive. It's been humbling. The consistent approach to showing up on that site every day and doing great work. At this point, we got 850 people on average a day that are showing up and drawing a paycheck on that site and doing awesome work. So as you pointed out, we passed the 1 year anniversary of that groundbreaking, and that means we're about 2 years away from completing the building. And it's at this point, we're coming up on the tail end of the concrete truck showing up and building the concourses and reinforcing that first layer of the cake. Next comes steel. Over the next few months, you're going to start seeing more steel showing up. Believe it or not, if you drive by on the highway and see the size of that building, it's probably about half of its height at this point. The steel is going to double the height of the building, and you guys saw it. It's cool to be able to walk that space, to be going from renderings, which are, I think, pretty breathtaking and awesome, but not to stand in this space and actually see something that's taken the shape of a stadium and to watch this thing come to life. It's been a lot of fun.
I'll be honest, I've been a little gun shy with renderings after the whole Nashville Stars thing because
touchy subject around here.
It was fun for a minute, but there's some logistical things that they hadn't quite thought through at the time.
We're 2 for 3 on renderings in Nashville.
Sure
Geodis
enough.
Park has gone up. New Nissan Stadium's going up. Not so much the baseball.
Waiting on that baseball.
But we did get a great glimpse into just the technological advancement of the new stadium right out of the gate based on the adjustable hard hats that was able to fit both of our heads. That was a very surprising development early on.
That can fit your head, bud.
Well, Buck's head is big figuratively. Mine is much more literal. But you did say after the tour, you talked about making the stadium future-proof, which was interesting. I don't think I've ever heard that word before. How do you define future-proof? And what is that challenge of trying to anticipate what the fan experience is going to be like, not in 2027, but in 2037?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things that made a renovation darn near impossible was the fact that the current Nissan Stadium was built to be one thing, and it just got to be an unwise choice to try to make it something else and make it a building that would make sense for Nashville and for the NFL for another 50 years. And so having been a part of all of that analysis, it's been really front of mind for us to say, how can we make sure that this building is one that not only is kind of where the puck's going in 2027, but also can adapt to where the puck may be in 2035 and 2045 and beyond. So, I mean, there's things like the fact that it's an enclosed building helps with its durability, right? So we can start there. But we've made decisions even over the past year to spend more money to make sure that we are creating as much flexibility and as much space as possible to adapt to whatever is the best fan experience, the best player experience, just a building that Nashville can and should be proud of, no matter what trends come along in terms of how people are getting their food and beverage, or how players need treatment before a game. We really are trying to build in as much flexibility and modularity into the building as possible to be able to meet every one of those moments.
Titans CEO and team president Burke Nihill in studio with us. To your point about when you bring up price at any level, fans, I think their ears perk up. And you brought up an interesting note that I hadn't heard about or talked about before, the guaranteed maximum price, the GMP, and how the flexibility that essentially allows you to be able to make those kind of adjustments. If you could expand on that for the audience.
Yeah, it's not a novel concept to our stadium building. Any construction project of a certain scale is probably going to have this GMP, guaranteed maximum price, a part of the approach between the owner of the building and the construction manager, the contractor working on it. The idea is getting to a place as early as possible where you ask the construction manager to lock in, to say, listen, this is what the building is going to cost, but for any of these other crazy things that would come along, so you can then get some level of certainty. And really proud of the work that our team has done. Kellen DeCourcy's our project executive. There's many, many others behind it, where we did everything we could to accelerate that process, get to a place where there's an actual building to be built. We know, the number of doorknobs and door hinges and light bulbs and everything else in the building, to give our construction manager an opportunity as early as possible to tell us this is what it's going to cost. And we reached that milestone last September. So for a big chunk of the building, like it's locked in. We're not going to go over budget in the way that you hear about some of these other buildings going over budget. There are things that we've pulled out of that guaranteed maximum price, that the team has flexibility to do things if we see opportunities to just get this thing right. But for the most part, the building's going to cost what it's going to cost, and we can just have comfort that that's going to be the number.
Mike Borgonzi, when we had him on at the Combine, talked about touch points of the offseason. As far as touch points with the stadium goes, what can fans kind of look to or look forward to as you guys continue to make progress over these next 2 years? Because it sounds like, drought conditions not ideal from a weather standpoint, but certainly beneficial to a construction standpoint.
Great for construction.
Yeah, great for construction. Certainly for the bright, shiny new palace to football that's being built on the East Bank.
Well, and just credit the team for it was snowing and really cold a few weeks ago, and they were safe about it, but the team was showing up, and there were 800 people on those days working too. They're putting in the work no matter the conditions, so long as they can do it safely. So let me answer that question in terms of construction, and then also kind of the fun stuff, the fan stuff. So on the front end of it, on the construction side, as I said, concrete will start wrapping up over the next couple of months. You'll see steel kind of at the same time start to come in and around the building and start going up. By the time we get to around Thanksgiving, we'll get to topping off as a construction term, where you've put the last piece of steel as high as it's going to go. So that'll give you a sense of when we'll actually be at that peak height. Probably by the end of this year, this building is going to look a whole lot like a stadium building. You can already see the shape, obviously, but in terms of its height, some of the facade features coming in. If somebody is going to a Titans game and is on that east side of the stadium, you're going to walk up to a building that's going to look a lot like the future stadium. Sometime next summer, so not 25, but 26 is another big milestone. It's summer to fall, somewhere in there, where we actually get the roof on and it's seal tight. So that translucent, perfectly round roof will be pulled up, seal tight, and then it's go time, because there are things that you don't want to do in a building like this until it's weatherproof. So you're not going to put in all of these seats and let the elements get at them. You'd rather have them be pristine and protected. And there's all sorts of really, really nice features and materials and workmanship that need to go in. And so that can't happen until that roof is seal tight. And at that point, you're going to end up seeing more like 1,600 workers a day showing up and just going to town on all the mill work and everything else. That's the construction side. Of course, completing the loop on that, the building is on schedule to be done sometime late February or sometime in March of 2027. everything is still on pace, which we're really grateful for.
Hell yeah!
On the side where fans are having access, an opportunity to come look at the building and see if they want to be a part of it, we went on sale at Titan's House with PSLs and suites and that sort of thing back in June, and we announced that we'd be doing this in 3 waves. Wave 1, which was our premium offerings, clubs, that sort of thing. The thinking was that would be somewhere between June and probably this February would be about the amount of time that we were on sale with those products. They actually sold out in mid-August. It was really a humbling response. We moved Wave 2 up because of that, and we're in Wave 2 at this point, and we've gotten a very similar response. It's we've had a lot of demand, and so we are now exploring when we can potentially move up Wave 3, which we were thinking was going to be a few months from now, but we're in the process, real-time meetings this week about whether we can move up Wave 3 and give folks in that Wave 3 access to come into Titan's House and take a look. Wave 3 will be the terrace level. Terrace level is the 300 level and 400 level. If you look at the renderings and you see those beautiful terraces up on kind of the upper side of the building, that's effectively the concourse. There's an indoor aspect to it and an outdoor aspect to it out in that terrace level. The 300 level, you'll walk down from that area. 400, you'll take a few steps up. It is actually where my family has purchased PSLs because it's going to be that kind of cool experience up there. Great views of the game and then also access to those terraces.
And, drunks like me are just thinking, rooftop bar. How about that? Exciting stuff.
Scamper out of the press box.
You slide down every once in a while, depending on how the game's going. Burke Nihill in studio with us.
How much correspondence does the team have with the NFL in regards to the timeline and in relation to a potential target year for a Super Bowl in Nashville as we look at 2029 and beyond? How does that work as you guys cross a lot of these touch points, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, we talk all the time. It's there is one executive, in fact, who came up through the event side of the NFL and now does both events and stadium work. And so we became friends during the NFL draft process. We talk about whatever pretty frequently. And so from the moment we were designing this building, his team and others have had feedback in what they think this building should be for Titans games and then also being ready for things like the Super Bowl. So the NFL has been involved and has had input, and we've made changes to the building based on that input from the design phase. In terms of keeping track of where we are in construction and their Super Bowl timelines, yeah, of course we're talking to them all the time about that sort of thing. Anybody who thinks that they know what's going to happen relative to a Nashville Super Bowl, they know more than I do then. The NFL is really tight to the vest about how they handle these things, and the Super Bowl has been awarded through 2028. It'll be in Atlanta in 2028, so 2029 is the next available Super Bowl. We'll absolutely throw our hat in the ring. We think we'll be ready for it. But there's all sorts of factors to keep in mind. I am absolutely positive that there will be a Super Bowl in Nashville, and it will be at the earliest opportunity for the NFL to put the Super Bowl here. They just have all sorts of things they think about. It's not just about whether the stadium's ready or the city's a good place for it. There's other venues who are due an opportunity. They have factors beyond the venue or the hotels and that sort of thing, just being sure that this is the right moment in time. But we're definitely going to be putting our foot forward for 29 and 30 and 31 and just getting it here as soon as we can.
Obviously, the stadium, very exciting, but you want to have an exciting product to put in the stadium, and the work continues to that effect. I know you guys have undergone a significant amount of changes over these last 3 years specifically, and now Mike Borgonzi, Brian Callahan, Chad Brinker, and the powers that be, that conglomeration of people who are tasked with that. From your standpoint, Burke, I wonder, because we hear from them a lot, patience over panic. And as somebody who, I think from our standpoint has been empowered to speak on behalf of ownership, obviously it's still Amy Adams Strunk's franchise and she has the final say-so in all realms. But as when we hear that, we think about it from a team building standpoint and where you guys are. I wonder if you could kind of explain to the fans how you guys at the top end of the organization are thinking about that as we get ready to go through the free agency process and the draft process, and we got quarterback questions and all these different things.
The goal, unquestionably, is to create a sustained championship program, right? There are a few Mount Rushmore programs in the National Football League, And they all know who they are. They go out building their team the right way and sustaining their team the right way. And that's the goal. That's Amy's goal. That's what she's empowered Chad and Mike and Brian to help build. I don't think this is even what you're inferring. There is no pressure from the business side to say, do it this way because we need to be in a hurry. There's a stadium coming online in 2027.
But I think it's important that you say that, whether, I wasn't inferring that, but I think that for the audience, because they're looking at people's timelines and being like, all right, how long do these people in these positions actually have to get this done?
No, there's a sense of urgency to become the program that we want to be, right? And I was a part of the interview process with Mike Borgonzi coming online. I'm very pleased to say I've only seen him probably 3 times since he had his press conference, and that's because they've been in a draft room. You heard them talk about this. I can tell you there were a couple times I needed to overlap with Mike or Chad and ask them a question that was really not incredibly important, but kind of urgent. And I just had to be hanging out in the hallway when they came out of the draft room to go grab a snack before they headed right back policy. In. It was real. It was 21, 22 days, including weekends, where they got in there before 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, and they didn't come out until 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night at times. And so they're hard at work doing this, building a culture, building a team the right way. And we're not putting any pressure on them to do anything in particular other than get us to where we need to go so that we are on that Mount Rushmore of the great NFL franchises in everything we do. I mean, my focus and the business team's focus is on things like fan experience and making sure this stadium is just the most incredible home field advantage and a place that Titans fans are proud of. And it's really something that you carry across every aspect of the organization. But the primary thing, leave no doubt, is we should be awesome at football and consistently awesome at football. And that's the charge that Amy's given those guys. And I'm absolutely confident that they're on the course to doing it. But to your point, there's a way to do this that is proven through this, well-worn phrase at this point, draft, develop, retain, that requires a degree of just discipline and not chasing free agency or making rash decisions in the draft, and just doing it the right way. Amy's completely sold on that concept, and I expect it's going to pay dividends in the long run.
As much as you're comfortable sharing with the audience, because to your point, you were part of the interview process, what kind of set Mike apart from some of the other candidates? Because you guys did, I haven't been very complimentary over the course of the last 9 months, we'll say, but I was impressed with the list of people that you were able to put together and the efficiency that you guys were able to go through the hiring process. What kind of set Borgonzi apart in the 2 phases of interviews that you guys did with him?
One of the words that's come up a few times is complete. I think there were some non-negotiables about who this candidate had to be in terms of experience and beliefs and personality. But then there was a bit of an open mind. There were several different categories, some different types of people who'd fit that GM role. The thing that set Mike apart, he came in and you could just see he had this complete vision that he had developed through his time with the Chiefs. That everyone looks at the Chiefs now and acts as though this was easy, right? You get Patrick Mahomes, yeah. Well, he came into a team that had the number 1 draft pick at some point because they had the worst record in the league. They had to build this. They had to go about it, and he never skipped a step. He was a part of it. It's just deeply kind of who he is and what he believes. And he and Chad ultimately, at the end of the day, come from this same system, right? They have a lot of the same beliefs because it does tie back to this Packers tree of Ted Thompson and Ron Wolf. And so Mike just showed up with, there's this famous 150-page book. A lot of GM candidates and head coaching candidates will have some sort of materials to show you to say, this is what I'd plan to do. Mike started with, here's the 2nd day, here's the 3rd day, here's the 4th day on how he would go about bringing his program to the Tennessee Titans. And I'll just speak for myself. I mean, I was mostly just somebody in the room to, be a sounding board and that sort of thing. But I felt in listening to Mike, like the air in the building could change immediately with what he would bring, and it's felt that way to me.
It sounds like he and Brian hit it off immediately, had a lot of the same core principles. But for you guys as an organization, what do you feel like you learned about Brian Callahan through his first year as the head coach, obviously through some difficulties in year one?
Yeah, Brian's a competitor. I think you saw that fire coming out of him here and there. And he is somebody that is as self-aware as from a coaching perspective. He wants to be part of a great NFL program. He wants to be a great head coach. He wants to support his players well. And Brian is competitive with himself in that way. A lot of the conversations I've had with him, which again, it's mostly just as colleagues, but he's talking about that, where we're going and doing a lot of introspection, going through a 3-win team about what was this offseason going to look like that's going to be different than last offseason so that we can be better this year. Brian is a great human being. He's a whip smart football coach. I think the thing that I have personally just observed with him over these 12 months or so is, as a person, he's got that kind of hunger and thirst to be better, and is very self-aware in that way.
All right, now that you guys have asked all the good questions, let me ask an even better one. Burke, you already talked about maybe not getting a Super Bowl by 2028.
The entitlement around here.
But the real Super Bowl, the Super Bowl of wrestling, WrestleMania, could be coming to the new Titan Stadium. Have you had any talks with WWE about scheduling that? When do we know if WrestleMania will be coming to Nashville?
And also, he wants tickets from you.
And can he be involved?
Yeah. He would like to be play a
Stop giving all my
featured role.
plans away.
Listen, if we can get you in the ring, if it comes here, is that something you'd consider?
Absolutely. You think Bert the Bruiser ain't going to step in there and go off the top rope?
Don't do this. He's already unmanageable.
Hey, I'm gonna be gone in about 5 minutes, and you guys are gonna have to deal with him. Bert, I think I'd ask you to stay tuned. It's definitely. I think there's a great match there between Nashville and WrestleMania. They brought SummerSlam here, loved their experience. Obviously, a new stadium would set up really well for them with WrestleMania. And it's my belief, and it has been my belief, that it's just going to be a matter of landing these planes on the runway between WrestleMania and Super Bowl and Final Four and college football playoffs. You've got to go about this in the right order. They have their bidding windows open at different times. You can't have them all at once. But yeah, I think I'd stay tuned on WrestleMania. I think that's an early possibility.
Looking forward to it.
Burke Nihill, Titans team president and CEO, has been kind enough to spend some of his time with us. God knows he's wasted much of his important time hanging out with the three of us today, but we do appreciate you coming in. And I'm looking forward to seeing how all of this plays out. Stadium, football team, all of it. It's going to be an interesting season and couple of seasons, it feels like, to get to where you guys are trying to get to.
Yeah, the best is yet to come.
Coming up next, we are going to dive into what's going on with the latest in the Vikings and Sam Darnold. Free agency, of course, upon us. Do the Titans make sense? I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
Oh, it is lunchtime, which means it's time for Hatty Bees, the best hot chicken, not just in Nashville, in the world. Visit any one of their 7 locations, the factory at Franklin, Lower Broadway, Melrose, Midtown, Nashville West, even the Nashville airport. I promise you, I would not lead you astray when it comes to food. I take these things very seriously. Hatty Bees hand breads their fried chicken, cooked to order. Add your spice level, hot or not, mild, medium, all the way up to shut the cluck up. Whatever works for you, and pick your favorite side, and they have the best around. The Southern Greens, and my personal favorite, the Pimento Mac and Cheese. Download the app today. You'll get a free dessert just by doing so. If you want to top off your order with some banana pudding or peach cobbler, also allows you to skip the line, walk in, get your Hatty Bees famous hot chicken, and head back to the office, or just order it for delivery. You can bring the heat to your event, party, wedding, corporate function. Let Hatty be your guest of honor. Drop-off catering to full-service staffed events. They've got you covered. Go to hattybee.com and download the Hatty Bees app today.
Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hatty Bees Hot Chicken SEC Tournament. On the women's side of things, ongoing, Vandy starting to pull away from the Lady Vols in the fourth quarter. Just under 2.5 minutes to play, 79-65.
Yeah.
Vandy's possession right now.
Michaela Blake's 23 points.
And that happened basically in the second half.
Yeah, she has been lit on fire in the second half, and Vandy is going to wrap this thing up and move on in the SEC tournament. Lady Vols getting bounced in the second round, it would seem.
Man, think about, and I mentioned this earlier when we were talking about Shea Ralph with Slay in studio. I guess that was Monday or Tuesday? Monday, after the Tennessee-Alabama game. Candace Story-Lee deserves a lot of credit for the athletic department turnaround that they're experiencing, because we know that Tim Corbin and baseball are always going to be in the mix, right? And they may have, years where they're not competing at the very top of the sport, and obviously Tennessee, the defending national champions in baseball. But the men's basketball program looks viable. More than viable. The women's basketball program looks more than viable. The football program, which is the most interesting one of the four, looks kind of viable under Clark Lee. And I don't want to get ahead of myself coming off, I think obviously the upset over Alabama was the highlight of the season, and then things kind of petered out with Diego Pavia's injuries and the things that he was fighting through, and they ended up finishing, mediocre, but still mediocre for Vanderbilt in football is a win.
At every turn, patience has paid off for Candace Story-Lee. I'm sure Vanderbilt fans would have loved to see Jerry Stackhouse let go a little bit earlier than he was. Same goes for Stephanie White, who is now coaching Caitlin Clark in the Indiana Fever, if I'm not mistaken. And Clark Lee, man, they went 2-10. And they stuck it out with all of those coaches, with the exception of, obviously, Stackhouse and White. So they only kept Clark Lee, but it set up to where they could bring in Mark Byington, and the men's program has taken off. They brought in Shea Ralph, and the women's program has taken off. And Clark Lee has, to his credit, retooled a lot of things about his program, and in a lot of ways thrown out the original playbook that he had when he originally got the job, and has helped Vanderbilt to its best moment in football history, which is beating Alabama last year. And they're going to kind of run it back a little bit next year. And Clark Lee, I don't know if you saw, has given up play calling duties on defense, so continues to make tweaks and changes along the way. New stadium and everything, or renovation, I should say. Candace Story-Lee, kind of the star of Vanderbilt athletics at the moment.
So this is a conversation, this is a piece of audio that deserves, honestly, more time for us to chew on it, and I think we can circle back around to it tomorrow since we're so guest-heavy today. Adam Sparks, the Knoxville News Sentinel, going to get us updated on the latest in Knoxville. Spring ball underway with the University of Tennessee, or will soon be underway at the University of Tennessee, so we will have a Vols update for you at 12:20. But, Bert, you found this piece of audio from Mike Florio talking about the Vikings situation with J.J. McCarthy and Sam Darnold. What additional context can you add to it before we play it?
Right. The thing I appreciate and also don't appreciate about Mike Florio at the same time is he's always in the gossip. He's always got the juicy details. So he's being asked about, hey, so what do you think's up after Stafford? Sam Darnold's obviously the biggest quarterback domino to fall. Where does he go? And what's the chance he goes back to Minnesota?
Look, there are different ways it can go. Now that he hasn't been tagged, that's off the table. I thought maybe they would tag and trade him, tag him and keep him for a year. They might still keep him. A lot of it depends on, and this has parallels to Kirk Cousins last year. What else is out there for Sam Darnold? And is he willing to take that in lieu of whatever the Vikings' best offer is, assuming they're going to put an offer on the table? I have no reason to think they won't put an offer on the table that is good for them. But what is the magic number that would be good for the Vikings to bring Sam Darnold back? And what would the structure look like? Would it be a one-year deal, or would it be 2 years or longer? And 2 years becomes the magic number, magic in a bad way, from J.J. McCarthy's perspective. Because if they make a 2-year commitment to Sam Darnold, I predict J.J. McCarthy's going to ask to be traded. And maybe that's what the Vikings would want to do. You know, before the wheels came off in Week 18 for Darnold, before the chariot went back into a pumpkin, the thinking was, hey, wait a minute. We kind of stumbled into plutonium by accident with Sam Darnold, so J.J. McCarthy is better than any of the quarterbacks in this year's class. You get a top 5 pick for him. You go get some stud player at some other position of need. Win-win. Sorry, J.J. Right. Stuff happens, and you're getting a fresh start somewhere else. If they try to do an Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love, sit 3 years, handoff to McCarthy, McCarthy's not going to be on board with it, I believe. That's going to be a problem.
That's pretty gossipy and juicy, to your point. J.J. McCarthy on the move if Sam Darnold returns, which, by the way, if you think that there's not a chance that Sam Darnold doesn't end up back in Minnesota, you're foolish.
Stupid, some would say.
Idiotic, even.
Do you remember the Green Bay game? I mean, his best performance as a Minnesota Viking happened, to me, in the second to last week of the season in the 27-25 win over Green Bay at home. I think that was the game where they had a big lead and the Packers made it really interesting at the end, but the Vikings hung on. Darnold was 33 of 43, 377 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, a rating of 116.1. And after the game in the locker room, he is crowd surfing with his Vikings teammates.
Sure.
And we came in that Monday or whatever it was and said, yeah, you think that guy's going anywhere? I mean, look at that. And then they cratered as an offense against the Lions and scored 9 points again in the playoffs against the Rams.
He cratered.
Sure, absolutely. But, that's not lost on me. I would understand it either way if the Vikings believe they are in a position to consider their ceiling and they think J.J. McCarthy can help boost them there, even if that's a big risk for me for a rookie coming off a knee injury who's never played a snap in the NFL. I would also understand if you're going to keep the guy that just gave you the best regular season you've had since the 90s.
Something I'd like to talk about tomorrow, a little tease for tomorrow. If J.J. McCarthy does become available, if Sam Darnold does return to Minnesota, how does that impact the Titans' ability to move off the number 1 pick? It would add another quarterback to the free agent pool or the availability pool.
Why are you doing the segment now?
No, I'm just doing a little tease. You don't like to be teased? You like to jump right into it?
No, I'm
foreplay for Buck.
I'm pro foreplay, but only if it occurs in the sec chamber.
In the chamber.
We got graphic design work from one of our
Ann Herndon.
One of our daily listeners, Ann Herndon, did excellent work to put 8th grade Lucas in the sec chamber.
That was diabolical.
What a field trip.
Coming up next, in the meantime, what is the timeline for this team to trade the number 1 overall pick? Because at the end of the day, I do believe that is their preference. We will discuss coming up next.
It is 12:01. Good afternoon from the 104.5 The Zone studios. I'm Lucas Panzica. Titans news, the team making it official that they are hiring veteran offensive coach Mike McCoy as a senior offensive assistant. McCoy is a former head coach in the NFL with multiple stints as an offensive coordinator. Most recently, he was the quarterback's coach for the Jacksonville Jaguars and Trevor Lawrence for the last 3 seasons. In NFL news, the LA Rams are bringing back wide receiver Tutu Atwell on a 1-year deal worth $10 million of fully guaranteed money. College basketball, the SEC tournament happening in Greenville, South Carolina. Vanderbilt closing out an 82-72 lead over the Lady Vols as they'll look to move on from the second round and eliminate Tennessee. The Nashville Predators are back home tonight hosting the Seattle Kraken, a 7 p.m. puck drop at Bridgestone Arena. The Preds traded Tommy Novak and Luke Shen away to the Pittsburgh Penguins in exchange for forward Michael Bunting and a 2026 fourth-round pick. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Final hour on this Thursday. We've had a lot of fun. We've had a lot of good conversations. We're not done yet. We got Adam Sparks of the Knoxville News Sentinel coming up here in just about 20 minutes from now. Give us an update on Vol spring ball. So are they for sure not having a spring game? Is that determined?
No, there is no news on a spring game for Tennessee one way or the other. I assume that to mean there will be a spring game, but it's starting to become more commonplace. Coaches deciding not to.
All right, we will get the pertinent information from Sparks momentarily. In the meantime, what's the timeline for a team with the number 1 overall pick to potentially pursue a trade? So we've been able to outline some of this with, for example, Coach Dave McGinnis, because Mac was on the Rams staff when the Titans last traded away the number 1 overall pick. And Lucas did well to ask Mac the question, when did those conversations start? Max said a couple of days, the weekend before the combine. And then, obviously, it picks up traction at the combine.
But when did that drop?
2 weeks before the NFL draft.
April 14th, 2016.
Correct. I remember that was my first draft that I covered because I got here after Mariota had been drafted in 2015. So 2 weeks before the NFL draft, they finally get a deal that is sufficient for the trade of the number 1 overall pick at the time, which had Jared Goff and Carson Wentz at the top of the order. And, of course, Goff went 1 to the Rams, and Wentz went 2 to the Eagles. The Titans moved back to the mid-teens, 15 or 16, if I'm not mistaken. Then, on draft night, traded back up to 8 to acquire Jack Conklin and, some additional players, including Kevin Dodd and Derrick Henry and Austin Johnson and a couple of other players that played significant snaps for this team for quite some time. So the timeline, to me, for this year's pick is more interesting because there's less suitors. Now, we don't know every team that's called the Titans about the number 1 overall draft pick, but we know the team that's most interested is the Vanderbilt Commodores. Get ready to, and do, close out the Lady Vols 84-76, the final in the second round of the SEC tournament. Shea Ralph beats Tennessee twice for the first time in the same season.
Wow.
As head coach of Vanderbilt's program. Vandy accomplishing a lot athletically this year, and very cool to see on a variety of different fronts.
And a tough end of the year for the Lady Vols, too, with a bad loss to Georgia and bounced in the second round of the SEC tournament.
They're not done, though, are they? Will they not be in the...
No, they'll be in.
Okay.
Did not finish strong. A loss to Kentucky, a good Kentucky team, but at home to a bad Georgia team on senior night. But no, Tennessee should be in the NCAA tournament, see if they can pick up some momentum from there.
Okay, so Vandy gets the honor of playing number 1 South Carolina in the conference tournament bracket. So that quarterfinal game will be tomorrow, and we will have it on while the show is on. But sticking with the number 1 overall pick timeline, this one's more interesting to me because I don't remember, and I wasn't in depth enough with the team to have enough people to talk to kind of learn more about it at the time. Given that was my first season, my first real season, or first draft, first off season covering them. But this year, it's really the Giants bidding against themselves. Now, could a team emerge as the process continues, as more quarterback dominoes fall, as Sam Darnold gets a landing spot, whether it ends up being back in Minnesota or elsewhere? I mean, hell, it could be. It could be here, I guess. I hope it's not here, but that's just me. Right now, it's the Giants most interested in the pick.
That's what we believe, yes. But we're also not talking that much, I feel like, of the 2 New York teams. They're not in that dissimilar a situation at quarterback.
The Jets are arguably in a more difficult situation. Well, I guess it depends on how you view it. The Giants have basically everything but a mandate that says, hey, you're going to win or you're getting fired.
Yeah, and that's the big difference. The Jets are on, a new timeline, new coach, new GM, but their quarterbacks are Tyrod Taylor and Jordan Travis right now.
Mm-hmm. And their roster is better than the Giants.
Exactly. So maybe we should be talking more about the Jets as a team that could be within striking distance there and would want to get up to 1.
No, but Lucas, it's not to me, because yes, you are correct. We should talk about basically everybody from 7, where the Jets are, up. We could talk about, including the Browns, theoretically, if they wanted one quarterback significantly over the other quarterback, the cost to get from 2 to 1 would not be so great that they couldn't afford to do it. So basically everybody from 7 to 2, we could talk about. But the Giants are the team that's the most desperate, publicly and privately. And there is the most amount of information on, they're going to try to get up there. Like, that's the one that we definitively know the most about. So until such time as more information becomes available to that effect, it does feel like we're in a situation where it's tough for the Titans to drive up leverage until we have more information on free agency, and that'll only be a couple of days literally 4 days from now when legal tampering starts, so you don't got to wait that long. But right now, the Titans' priority should be driving up the most amount of leverage with the best, with the number 1 overall pick, because they hold the cards to start the draft. And it's tougher to do if you've got a team in the Giants that kind of knows they're bidding against themselves right now. And it doesn't mean that if they got a good enough deal, that a deal would be done tomorrow anyway. Like, you would still probably wait. I bet we get into the month of April before the pick is moved. That's kind of the timeline that I'm operating on, that they're going to let, and Mike Borgonzi said this on the show, right? We're going to let this thing play out. Like, we're going to try to max out our leverage as much as humanly possible, whether it's the first or the second or the third week of April. Hell, it could be draft night for all we know.
The last time the number 1 pick was dealt, it happened during the SEC men's basketball tournament. I remember it breaking, sitting in the stands after we did the show at Bridgestone Arena watching whatever game we were watching. It might have been a Tennessee game. So mid-March was when the Panthers traded back with the Bears, but that was a slam dunk. We knew the Carolina Panthers were not going to draft a quarterback at number 1 overall. They had Bryce Young, so they were always going to trade back, and that was quite a haul that they got to move off of that pick, with DJ Moore included. With the Titans, it's obviously not as obvious. But let's say, for argument's sake, the Titans...
obviously not as obvious.
Yeah. I am... words are my job.
A wordsmith,
that's right.
One might say.
As they say.
You even struggled to get that one out.
8th grade spelling bee champion. Yeah, you couldn't think of the word words.
You're going to cling to that for the rest of time. That's the best comeback he's had on the show in 4 years, Bert. 8th grade spelling bee champion.
Put it on my tombstone.
You guys are reminding me too much of my childhood. I'm back here minding my own business, trying to work, and I just hear you guys arguing through the wall. Mom and Dad need to stop, dadgummit. I'm trying to do my homework.
Do you not remember the show before you left? I know the morning show is more peaceful. Less contentious, some might say.
You guys just need to get along. Don't make me bring out the big T-shirt. Did y'all ever have to wear the big T-shirt with y'all siblings?
I won't even let the two of you get near me, much less. Like he's saying they would put you in a big T-shirt and then make you essentially get along.
Put you and your brother in a big old T-shirt?
There are plenty of pictures of me and my brother both have bloody noses and a giant T-shirt. A giant Hanes T-shirt.
That's such good parenting.
It's like hell in a cell. Just put them together in a straitjacket. Let them duke it out.
Except for it's Bert in a shirt.
Well, it's a rare enough thing, Bert in a shirt.
Yeah, it is rare.
I have to be at work today.
You know what? That explains why he's always shirtless. He's so shirt averse. The PTSD of the fabric on his chest just makes him think of being stuck in a shirt with his brother and getting punched in the face.
I've been naked ever since I was a kid. My mom used to call me the naked ninja because I'd get out of the shower. She was like, "This is embarrassing. You're 18, please." Nobody could catch me.
We have company. Okay.
The neighbors are here.
Since Robert wants us to stop arguing, for argument's sake.
Still answering the door naked when the pizza guy comes.
Let's say.
You don't have to tip if you do that.
The Titan, he's getting out of there.
Well, different kind of tip.
Let's say.
All right, now. Hey, God, where's that
we were having a nice time.
Hey, you knew where I was going.
Let's say the Titans were to sign Sam Darnold. Quickly, what would be what would be a deal for Sam Darnold that you wouldn't turn your nose up at? Just for curiosity's sake, since you're so against signing Sam Darnold?
I'm against signing him for 40. I would be more amenable at 30. But I think if he's getting 30, and by the way, I know for a fact that the Vikings expect him to get closer to 30.
Then 40.
That opens the door for them to bring him back on a shorter term.
Right. Well, let's say the Titans, and again, Paul Kaharski reported yesterday, the Titans don't have interest in signing him for a long-term pricey deal. Mm-hmm. Let's say the market's not that great for Sam Darnold. Maybe not as good as a lot of people are projecting, and the Titans are able to sign him for a 2 to 3 year deal at that 30 range. Would that accelerate what we think would be the timeline for them to move off the number one pick?
If they sign Sam Darnold to a closer to $30 million deal.
Because at that point, it's like, okay, let's go. We're moving off this thing, right? I mean, I suppose they could draft Cam Ward, but to me, the biggest appeal of bringing in Sam Darnold is what it gives you in terms of stability at the position and the option to actually help around your roster.
It would speed it up because they would lose more leverage, and they would have to settle for probably closer to what they're getting, offers that they're getting now, as opposed to, kind of holding a team like, and we'll continue to use the Giants as the example because there's the most information on the Giants. They're trying to hold the Giants hostage right now for as long as they can to drive up their leverage. Signing Sam Darnold would, of course, mitigate a good deal of their leverage because they would then have their quarterback solution, in theory, for anywhere between 1 to, I don't think he's going to get a 4-year deal if he signs here, but let's say 1 to 3 years for Sam Darnold. I think that it would speed it up because it would basically, they would have showed their hand, right? They would have showed their hand. So at that point, you say, all right, Giants, we'll take your 3 and we'll take your this year's 3rd or 2nd, and we'll call it a day and move on. 615-737-1045 is how you can join the conversation if you so choose. Joe is next.
Afternoon, gentlemen.
Hello.
Hey, listen, I haven't heard anything about Garoppolo. He played for the Rams last year. He's a free agent. I think Sean McVay wants to bring him back. He only played one game, but he was pretty impressive. 341 with 2 touchdowns in one game against the Seahawks. So that to me is sort of I guess you would call it a bridge quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
I guess my problem is the history of the Titans drafting quarterbacks. The last 2 they've drafted is Will Levis and Malik Willis. I mean, you have to go up from there, but I'm not sure that the value in the number 1 pick isn't in the quarterback, it's in the trade. And Buck, can we just finally fill that hole in the offensive line where you've got a number 1 pick? I mean, I know people will go crazy, but I'm fine with picking Will Campbell and bringing him in.
Appreciate the call, Joe. That's 60 seconds on the clock. And his final point, if you couldn't hear it over the blaring Oscars music, is he would be comfortable with Will Campbell in the 1st round, even as not sexy as that would be. We've talked about Abdul Carter. We've talked about Travis Hunter. We've talked about Cam Ward. I'm not interested in Shedeur Sanders with the number 1 overall pick. That's just me. We have not talked about the possibility of an offensive lineman. If you move back, let's say, okay, the Jets at 7. If you move back to 7, that starts to get you into the offensive line conversation because he is the best available tackle, collegiate tackle. Whether he ends up being a pro tackle is a different matter.
We have not talked about Jimmy G at all. He is free agent.
Why don't we get into Jimmy G coming up next as well? Well, we have Adam Sparks, the Knoxville News Sentinel. I suppose we could talk about Garoppolo tomorrow.
You talked about it being a sexy pick. It would be the sexiest quarterback room the Titans have ever had. If you re-signed Mason Rudolph and got Jimmy Garoppolo?
Mason, all right, because I've seen posts on Twitter about Will Levis having too much aura to be this bad, right?
Aura? What do you aura?
He's a pirate.
Careful. JFK?
Careful. You're getting close to.
He's a pirate. He's pirate.
Racial undertones there. Be careful. Back away from the microphone. That's a very convenient thing for you to run away from the microphone from. Either way, Adam Sparks of the Knoxville News Sentinel will join us coming up next. Will I have enough money when I retire? When should I start to draw from Social Security? If these questions are keeping you up at night, let me introduce you to a team that's there to keep you on the right track and to guide you through it. That's Trajan Wealth, Trajan Wealth, not just any financial firm. They're your partners in securing your financial future, and we all understand how important that is, especially these days. They are more than just a fiduciary firm at Trajan Wealth. They're a family-owned, veteran-led team that puts your needs first. Let their decades of experience specializing in retirement planning and wealth management work for you. Trajan Wealth offers free consultations to help you develop your plan and your peace of mind. So call them today at 615-270-5000. That's 615-270-5000, or visit them online at TrajanWealth.com. Advisory services offered through Trajan Wealth, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. This is a paid advertisement. What the hell was that?
What just happened?
Ross,
How
turn
dare you?
The audio for the TV you're watching currently on.
We just got Pat McAfee railroading us. Dolly, of all people, she lost her husband this week.
Way to pay tribute.
Rest in peace, Carl Dean.
Well, Bert's first reaction was to ask how he could slide in on Dolly Parton after her husband passed away.
Look, it's a plausible question. Is she not the most fitting sugar mama of all time now? Widow, old, plenty of money. Don't throw me into the bus, dadgummit.
Disrespect.
While he's talking over her song, whilst trying to figure out how he can replace her dead husband.
Adam
Technically,
Sparks.
BB song.
If I was Adam Sparks, I would be leaving. I'd be gone.
Why he continues to agree to do this show is beyond me. Adam Sparks of the Knoxville News Sentinel joins us now on 104.5 The Zone. Why do you say yes to doing this show as often as you do?
Thank you, though.
You're very unwise to associate yourself with us.
Yeah, Buck, just to see that beautiful stash. I have not seen that yet.
Yeah, well, it's Lucas has accused me of Vrabel cosplay and all manner of other things. My girlfriend hates it, but I'm rather enjoying it.
I was gonna say moonlighting in a Freddie Mercury tribute band. That's what it looks a little more like.
Yeah, you don't think it's not as full as the Vrabel stash.
No,
it does have the more of the Remy Malik, Freddie Mercury look.
Well, that just so happens that both Remy Malik and I are Egyptian, so perhaps that's where we get our facial hair.
I was gonna go more Rhett Butler, but that's way before all of our time.
So spring ball is getting ready to get underway in Knoxville. Obviously, building off the college football playoff appearance is on the forefront of everybody's minds. What's just generally the vibe around the football team heading into another new year? I know things get underway much sooner than we're getting to them, but in your world, what's kind of the vibe check right now?
Wide open. A year ago, we kind of knew what this team was. A lot of veterans, a lot of fifth-year, sixth-year seniors a year ago. Now it's what spring practice, what makes it fun in some circumstances. It's a lot of young players, a lot of open positions, a lot of unknowns. There's only 4 transfers, but there's 22 freshmen that are here as early enrollees. The one that everybody wants to see is David Sanders, the 5-star offensive tackle. But wide open is the vibe because there's so many different guys that I could see factoring in on this team. On the other hand, I could see guys a month and a half from now, looking into the transfer portal and thinking maybe I need to go elsewhere. So I think just that uncertainty is going to make it fun.
KnoxNews.com, of course, is where you can read him. You can also check out the podcast that they are producing at the Knoxville News Sentinel, where you guys went through the position groups that Josh Heupel should be most worried about entering spring practice and ranking them. I don't want to give away the content of that podcast, but for the purposes of the audience, what were some of the position groups that you guys brought up?
Wide receiver and offensive line are easily, I think, the top 2. That is as long as Ricky Gibson doesn't hold out, which is an NFL term that suddenly we found in college. But it's offensive line and wide receiver. Offensive line is replacing 4 starters, and even the 1 starter coming back, Lance Hurd, he underperformed last year. Wide receiver, I think, is the most critical position because if the wide receiving core is not good, Tennessee's offense is not good. If Tennessee's offense is not good, this team is an 8-4 team. It's not a 10-win team like it was last year. They had major questions at wide receiver last year. I think they have 2 big problems at wide receiver. I don't know if they have an impact star player at the position, and they also don't have numbers. Like they've barely got a starting 3 that you feel like you can count on. So they've got to add numbers probably in the portal after spring practice, but before that, they've got to figure out if they have any all-SEC caliber receivers. And I don't know the answer to that, and I don't think they do either.
Why does cornerback not fall into that mix given the Jermod McCoy injury? Or is there, and I would be lying if I pretended to be super familiar with the depth chart or the depth at that specific position, but I guess that would be one of the ones that popped into my head just because he's a really good player, obviously, and tore his ACL a month ago, a little more?
Yeah, he tore his ACL a month ago. Jermod McCoy is an All-American. And he'll be out. Who knows how long? I think he'll be out at least early in the season. Torn ACLs, that's something easy to come back from. The reason that I think corner is not the most critical position is because Ricky Gibson, I think, is going to practice tomorrow. Every indication I've gotten is that he's going to. He announced in sort of an odd way, or I should say Ricky Gibson's people announced about a week ago that he was going to go into the transfer portal. The indications are that would be over NIL money. He wanted more money. Interestingly, he was not quoted in the story. Ricky Gibson hasn't talked about it publicly yet. And there was a question of whether or not he was going to practice or if he was going to be like a legitimate college holdout. Indications I've gotten is he's going to practice tomorrow, and that tells you that they're probably going to work things out money-wise behind the scenes. If Ricky Gibson was not out there, corner would probably jump up to the top of the list. But because he's going to be out there, I think it's a concern, but it's not a concern that they can't figure out because I do think they have other good pieces in the secondary. Boo Carter is a future star, maybe a current star. They've got a safety coming back. They have some options in the secondary. Guys in Nashville need to listen for Caleb Beasley, former Lipscomb star. He could start at corner right now with Jermod McCoy being out. He's certainly a guy that'll be in the mix in the spring.
Adam Sparks, Knoxville News Sentinel, here with us on 104.5 The Zone. Of course, you can read him and all his colleagues at knoxnews.com.
Now, that's where I was going to go next, Adam, was your read on the Ricky Gibson situation. And, it's interesting to hear you talk about it like it's not that significant a concern. I mean, does that sort of sum it up for you in terms of Ricky Gibson that, he's putting this out there, but in all likelihood, things are going to work out on that end, or at least Tennessee is going to, have a plan in place for things to work out?
Well, it's a binary issue. If he remains on the team, it's not a problem, or it's not as big of a problem. You got to still figure out how to fill the other corner spot with McCoy out. If he's not on the team, it's a massive problem. So it's either or. And I think Ricky Gibson has some leverage. I mean, every indication that I've gotten was that he was happy with his NIL deal and everything else after the season, and you could sort of read between the lines that his people recognized leverage when the star corner went down. And he suddenly has a higher value, and I think they're gonna do what they need to meet that. Because here's the thing with Tennessee, they're between a rock and a hard place. If they don't give him more NIL money or arrange something that would make him happier, and he leaves, you're not down one corner, you're down two corners, and in the spring portal window, like there's not good options to go find starters. So his people recognized, I think, that there's some leverage there, and I think Tennessee's going to give in at least to some extent, and I think he'll practice tomorrow. I think he'll remain on the team. Fans were pretty ticked off by this, but I think if he plays well, fans will forget about it. Like, this offseason, this has become the norm now. Mike Matthews got paperwork to go in the portal but never went. Nico toyed with the idea that maybe he would go into the portal, supposedly. He never did. Boo Carter tempted the portal a little bit, but never went in. Like, this is becoming the norm. Fans hate it, but, if you look in college football and you start at the top, everybody's chasing money, and this is just filtered down to players. Conferences want more money from the TV contracts. Schools want more money from the conferences and the contracts. Coaches want more money from the schools. And so now players want more money from NIL collectives in the schools. This all goes down. So if you're going to be ticked off, I get it. I get it. I love college football. I hate what's happened to the sport. But if you're going to be mad about players utilizing leverage to get more money, you got to look at everybody else in the sport. They're just following what they've been shown.
Everything's fine, totally stable, nothing to see over here. Sure. College football, top to bottom. What is top of mind for you, Adam, when it comes to what you want to see from Nico Iamaleava throughout the course of spring practice?
Well, I mean, I want to see some chemistry with the guys around him. He's in a tough spot because we're not going to really lay many eyes on him during spring because we don't know who his offensive line is. We don't know who his center is going to be. Cooper Mays must be replaced. We don't know what his wide receiving core looks like. He's going to have a new running back. He doesn't have Dylan Sampson. If he's not ready to lead, that's tough because he's going to be pressed into it because he is. For a year ago, he was the young guy that everybody talked about like he was their little brother. That's over now.
Adam, I want to go back to something that you said about Nico specifically and toying with the idea of going to the portal. And I get that that's, standard protocol. You have to consider your options. What details or how much information were you able to find out on how interested he might have actually been? Because obviously it didn't happen, so Vols fans don't have to fret right now, but that would have had huge implications for Tennessee's upcoming season.
I don't think this was something that was just about Nico. Any high-profile quarterback, talented quarterback around college football is being tampered with every offseason now. Miami ended up with a quarterback that they waited for in Carson Beck. I think they were looking at about 5 or 6 different guys. I think Nico was one of them. And it's so easy to tamper now. You can just, go to the guy's former 7-on-7 coach and get a message through. I'm not saying that specifically happened with Nico, sure. But if you see a guy rumored out there as maybe looking at the portal, it's not necessarily that a player is fishing for a better deal. It's that teams are fishing for that player.
Adam, do you expect Tennessee to have a regular spring game like any other year as other programs? They are.
Yeah, they are. They are. It'll be on April 12th, but it's going to be capped by attendance. 45,000 is all that will get into Neyland Stadium. There's still renovations going on, so you'll see most of the lower bowl field, but it'll be 45,000. Tickets are going to go on sale tomorrow. $10 a ticket if you can get one. If you can get in, I think the big headline from the spring game is that it's not going to be on TV, and that's now the norm with a lot of schools. It's not going to be on TV. The reasons behind that is the SEC network is not mandating it. You don't have to put it on TV anymore. And obviously coaches don't want it on TV because they're sort of they're promoting the play. They're exposing players to the portal for tampering. All these coaches will look around and say, hey, that guy on SEC network, that backup receiver, I'd sure like to have him. And suddenly your players are going to get tampered with. So, and the other thing too is it's a boring product. I know some fans like it, but you see more walk-ons than you do starters. So what you'll see in Tennessee's case, instead of the televised spring game, you'll see not long after the spring game, you'll see a 30-minute all-access show that will air throughout the spring and summer about, behind the scenes of the spring game and highlights and those sort of things. But, yeah, if you want to see a spring game, you got to be one of the 45,000 to get into Neyland. Or you can listen to it on the Vol Radio Network. That's the only other way to do it, but you can't see it unless you're live.
Oh, Mike Keith's debut. Exciting.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man. That just got me really excited. Or you can follow at Adam Sparks on Twitter and keep up with all the updates with his work at Knox News during the spring game.
Be doing that anyway, you fools.
Absolutely. Adam, as we look towards the NFL draft, we've talked a lot around here about James Pierce Jr. and what he was as a prospect before the start of the season, potential number 1 overall pick, to now fringe first-round pick, and all this stuff about how he's doing in the interview process. He obviously crushed a lot of the testing in terms of his agility and athleticism. But, how have you sort of absorbed the narrative, the discourse around James Pierce Jr.? I know you didn't really get a chance to talk to him as he wasn't made available, but how have you processed all of that as his stock has kind of fallen over the course of the last few months?
I think in his career, we got him twice in press conference settings after the Citrus Bowl and after one game late last season. That was pretty much it. It's some of it is predictable. We knew it at the time. I remember first up, James Pierce is really smart, and he's a good quote when you talk to him. But for whatever reason, he didn't want to talk to the media. I don't know if he got bad advice. I think he didn't follow good advice. I remember at UT's media day on campus last season, all the players showed up. James didn't. He had a chair there. I took a picture of his empty chair. That he did not show up. He was scheduled to be there. And I remember talking to some other UT media afterward, and I said, if James was a quarterback, this would be detrimental to his draft stock because you have to do these things. The fact that he's a pass rusher, it'll probably be overlooked. And I think some teams have overlooked it. The problem is he put himself in a position where he's having to explain why he's abnormal in the way that he doesn't talk to media and that he's standoffish about those sort of things. Again, he was given advice like, hey, dude, just go and talk to the media every once in a while, and it's going to be fine. He's a smart guy. He's a good guy. I tend to think a lot of the stuff now with the quote-unquote character issues is being exaggerated by teams that want to get him late in the first round. You know, you see that a lot of hey, if he could fall to me, I'm going to push this narrative as much as I can to make sure he didn't go, in the early to mid round, because I sure would like him at the end of the first. I think that's what's going on now.
People are so hyper-focused on that happening to quarterbacks that they forget that happens to other talented players in the draft, too. It's one of my least favorite parts of being involved with the NFL, but it would be ignorant to say that it doesn't happen. Adam Sparks, always good to join us, helping buffer our ignorance and make us smarter. KnoxNews.com is where you can follow along. At Adam Sparks is where you can follow along. KnoxNews.com is where you can read all of the great work that he does. Thank you, buddy.
Thanks, Adam.
All right, thanks, guys. You have a good one.
Adam Sparks with us on 104.5 The Zone. We've had a lot of smart guests today.
It's good when people smarter than us come on the show. We should do it more.
Yeah, I enjoy coming on the show.
Yeah, I do too.
Last call for phone calls. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Are you going to drop Pat McAfee into the middle of Johnny Be Good, too?
I am not.
Good. Last call for phone calls if you got them. 615-737-1045, the number. If you want to jump in there, fun show today, informative show today. The rare, fun, and informative show. Usually we're capable of one. Mostly it's not the informative part, but we've, I think, accomplished that successfully. Henry Anderson, Burke Nihill, Adam Sparks. You can check out the podcast if you missed it. Had a lot of smart guests on the show this week, and we're not done yet. Coach Dave McGinnis, of course, of Titans Radio, will join us, and I know Lucas plans to effort Charles Davis. We will keep you updated as to when Charles will join us, because he had a mock draft that's pretty interesting. This man had Jackson Dart, number 3 overall, to the New York Giants. And I know Jackson Dart made his 30 visit to the New York Giants last night. That is going to be an interesting disparity between Shador and Jackson Dart, and where they may go, and how high one may go or how low one may go, depending on how you view these two players.
Charles Davis is the Marie Antoinette of mock drafters. He's like, oh, aren't you worried about what people will say? Let them eat cake. I can't be concerned with the opinions of those mock drafters. You know, he knew dropping Jackson Dart in at 3 was going to set the internet. What does Charles Davis know? Who is this guy? Why does anybody care?
I truly don't think that Charles Davis thinks about the internet at all.
It sounds so peaceful.
I think that he is smart enough to know that everyone would be in a riot over a pre-free agent mock draft, and that everyone would go, can you believe what Charles Davis said? Click on it. And then also smart enough to not have a Twitter so he doesn't have to read what any of these mouth breathers say about him.
He had the Titans taking Shador Sanders,
number
1 overall, and the Browns selecting Cam Ward at number 2.
Which, it's not insignificant given that Charles Davis is a part of the Titans preseason broadcast, so fair to expect that Charles would have some level of conversation that might inform his mock draft. Also, who is Mary Antoinette?
Oh, who was I supposed to say?
You mean Marie?
Sure, yeah. Well, that's what you call her.
Mary's the ugly stepsister.
Who makes those nice microwavable lasagnas? Isn't that Marie Callender?
Callender?
I like her stuff, too.
She does cakes, too. She also does lasagna.
You like her work?
There you go. Big fan.
Brandon on the FNM Bank chat.
Even when left to our own devices, when we don't have a smart guest here to save us, we do things like Mary Antoinette.
I'm like half smart. See, I knew the last part. The Antoinette was the hard part.
I mean, we've had Mary Antoinette and Aura.
Aura.
How do you say it?
Don't look. Aura. Here, let Ross say it. I just like his voice. Ross, how do you say it?
Ross doesn't get to speak on the microphone for dropping Pat McAfee into the show.
How do you say it?
We do not reward screw-ups around here.
Say it.
It's aura.
Thank you.
Instead of aura.
You want to talk about mouth breathers? Nothing sounds more mouth-breathing than that. Aura.
Would you guys rather have this or a burger?
Oh. In a desperate attempt,
it's not even a good joke,
to bring it back somehow before we do polls, there is going to be some sort of shocker quarterback move up the board
3
pick in this draft. It's going to happen somewhere.
Dart at 3 would melt down the draft universe.
This draft is just screaming for one shocker at the quarterback position, I feel like, whether it's Jackson Dart or Will Howard, whoever.
Yeah, there will be. I mean, there's always one thing that shocks us, right? I mean, Trayvon Walker with the number 1 overall pick was shocking, given that Hayden Hutchinson went number 2. Because everybody, again, something that everybody in the world knew, except for the Jags, like nobody wants to work for Trent Baalke. Everybody in the world knew that, except for the Jags. They do seem to do that more often than not.
Brandon on the FNM Bank chat says, college free agency every semester is exhausting. After Adam Sparks had some pretty optimistic reporting on Ricky Gibson. I was surprised to hear him not really address it as that big a concern. He thinks he'll be out there at practice. He thinks Tennessee will make an effort to keep him in-house. But it is exhausting. I agree with Brandon. It is exhausting at multiple points in the offseason to have no clue what your roster is going to look like. I mean, something's got to be done here.
Well, I mean, it doesn't have to be done. Like, there's nothing to say that it absolutely has to be done. Like,
it's just not tenable, man. None of this stuff is tenable. I mean, for teams.
No, but that's not true. College football will continue to be played. There will still be people who are willing to do these jobs, even if that timeline for a lot of these coaches or general managers shortens. So I get what you're saying, and I agree with you, but don't call it untenable.
No, it's not going to go on like this because it can't.
No, I don't.
Because every coach in the country believes it can't go on. You will drive people out of the sport. Like
you already are. You drove Nick Saban.
That's what I'm saying. Like it can't go on like this. Teams are losing depth in the middle of playoff runs for players that want to be starters elsewhere. Like rosters are taking hits as they're getting ready to compete for a championship. It's just insanity. It's insanity. So. It's exhausting for fans, I think. And, I'm with you that they'll always be there, but that's also a dangerous way to go about things.
But I've also said that, kind of the same way that I've talked about NBA players and the way that they kind of openly disparage their own sport and their own regular season and their own all-star game. Like, you can only take your fans for granted for so long. And while I know it's America's second most popular sport after the NFL, college football, and there's a significant margin between any kind of football and the third most popular sport in this country, I wouldn't test college football fans too much more, or college sports fans, because basketball is, it's lost such, at least in the men's game. Like, I like that women's athletes have to stay longer now that they can make name, image, and likeness type of money, and that there's actual money to be made in the sport of women's college basketball, thanks in part to last year's star-studded draft class and things like that have helped up the profile and up the television dollars and things like that. I mean, men's college basketball is in a whole different world of hell, because not only is it one and done, now it's yearly transfers. Programs and players are unrecognizable. Like, it is my favorite sport in the world, and I went to an Indiana basketball game last Wednesday. I watched that, and I looked at those guys and said, those aren't my guys. Like, they don't care about this thing the way that I care about it. And they beat Penn State, and I stopped caring about that after a while. But then they do something like lose to Oregon when they have their NCAA tournament berth on the line, and it just makes you think these guys aren't in it for the reasons that I'm in it, which is kind of how I feel about professional sports, and that's kind of the complex that fans deal with their favorite athletes too. You ready for some polls?
Presented by Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer. If the Titans are to trade back from number 1 overall, when do you think it would happen by? John says Wednesday. Titans will definitely want to meet with the top 4 guys, and usually around the new league year is when you start to see some trades. I'm sure the Titans want to trade back and find a veteran to commit to for at least this upcoming season. Ed says the end of March. Jack says by the start of next week.
I think all that's too early. I think April. I think we get into April before we see actual movement. And that's not reporting anything or anything like that. I'm just gut feeling. I think they're going to play this out as long as they can.
Are you comfortable paying free agent safety Javon Holland $15 million? 50.7% say yes. The other 49.3% are saying no.
Even split.
Who should be SEC Coach of the Year? Bruce Pearl, Dennis Gates, Mark Byington, or Todd Golden? That's who, I think that's an appropriate kind of final 4 there. Bruce Pearl taking 54.5% of the votes. Mark Byington taking 23%. Dennis Gates, 11.7%. Todd Golden, just 10.8%.
I think it's Bruce Pearl. I think it should be Bruce Pearl. I get the argument for the Missouri coach.
Dennis Gates got it 2 years ago for a crazy turnaround, and then Mizzou bottomed out last year and went winless in SEC play, and then Dennis Gates did it again this year. So I will not be shocked if he ends up winning it. Same goes for Mark Byington with the turnaround he's done with Vanderbilt. But for Auburn to be as dominant as they've been, 2 conference losses, they do have to play Bama, though. Rematch happening this weekend down on the Plains. That should be fun. If you were a Vikings fan, what would you want at quarterback in 2025? 55.5% say they'd want J.J. McCarthy. 44.5% said they would want Sam Darnold on a new deal. I'd want Darnold. I'd want Darnold. I'd want the guy that just won me 14 games, but that's just me.
Yeah, okay. Well, he's not winning 14 games here, bud.
Oh, no. That I am sure of.
Okay. Just so you know. Also,
I'm talking about if I'm a Vikings fan.
Also, yeah, for sure. I'm also concerned because the chat learned how to lip read, and I called Robert a female dog in ways that could not be heard over the air, but the chat saw.
Well, good job making it heard over the air.
Recorded.
I didn't say it.
You definitely said it. I heard it. It hurt my feelings.
Well, yeah, I said it to you. I didn't say it to them. Are those the polls?
Yeah, let's get out of here.
All right, very good. It's been a great show. Check out the podcast if you missed it. Prime time tonight, tomorrow, Coach Mack. We'll look forward to seeing you there. Have a great rest of your afternoon.